Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What if Naruto inherited the power of Minato and Kushina, part 3. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Naruto let out a frustrated sigh and threw his paintbrush into the bucket. He turned to his teammates behind him and said, "I really hate chores." Kiba let out a grunt as he began peeling off the dried paint that had covered him, and Akamaru, who was perched atop Kiba's head, responded with a yelp. Silently nodding, Hinata checked to make sure she was clean of paint. From his cozy perch on a picnic table, Kakashi read his book and said, "Just 10 more until you get AC rank." Almost a week had passed since Team 7 was established and began to rule the ninja world. They had completed more than 15 D ranks in the previous week. They completed 2 or even 3 a day, which put them ahead of their fellow graduates who had completed only 4 or 5. It had been Kakashi's decision to rule out teamwork exercises for the Green Genin. The only real issue Hinata and Naruto had with their collaboration was when Kiba challenged Naruto to take the lead over the other Genin. Other than that, their collaboration was nearly perfect. Of course, Kakashi remained the team leader, but each squad usually had a Genin who led the other members of the squad in small tasks or in the event that their Junin instructor was unavailable. Kiba didn't bring up the challenge with Naruto since he believed Hinata would become enraged with him for assaulting her friend, but Naruto had disregarded it. Even though Kiba was still in the running for team leader, he managed to keep his composure during missions, and their teamwork remained solid. Of course, it could be better, but overcoming obstacles together was the best way to strengthen their relationship. For this reason, Kakashi was completing the required 25 D-ranked missions at a rapid pace, enabling his team to begin applying for C-ranked missions. The 3 of them were already well ahead of their fellow graduates, and as Kakashi continued to transform the pointless tasks into training exercises, the gap would only grow. In today's exercise, participants had to avoid enemy kunais, which were essentially thin paintbrushes dipped in paint, in order to concentrate on painting a fence for a civilian. As previously mentioned, Kiba took a few hits but was still drivable. Because of her Kage Genkai, Hinata had proven to be flawless, and Naruto only had one spot on his forearm, the place where he had pushed Kiba to keep a paintbrush from striking Akamaru. Naruto was now one of Akamaru's favorite people. As Kiba whimpered, Akamaru barked in support of his master, "Why do we have to do these lame mock missions, Kakashi-sensei? Everyone knows that we're too badass for him." Naruto shrewdly replied, taking a seat at the picnic table, "Because we're very fresh Genin, kibbles. Would some princess really trust us to protect her if we've only been Genin for less than a week?" Kiba complained about how unfair everything was, but he remained silent since he understood Naruto's point. He simply prayed to Kami so that neither his mother nor sister would ever find out, as he had grown accustomed to Naruto's moniker for him. There's no way to lessen that kind of humiliation short of seppuku. Kiba and Hinata both sat down after Hinata left. They were awaiting payment from their client for a job well done. Kiba sat down and said, "So what are we doing after this, sensei? Training or another lousy D rank? I have a bit of a treat for you 3 today. We're having a group sparring match with the other rookie Genin," Kakashi announced. It had been decided to pit their adorable Genin against each other the day following the true Genin test. Retrospection in the Hokage's office, Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma stood since their teams were the only ones to pass. The Hokage held back a sigh, realizing that this year only 3 teams had made it through. To just boost Konoha's numbers, he was seriously thinking of strapping a few Junin and special Junin with reserved Genin. The Kyuubi attack dealt a serious blow to their numbers 13 years ago, and since then, a combination of failed graduations and workplace deaths have further reduced their shinobi intake. Is there an issue with the academy? Are they failing to adequately prepare the next generation? Hiruzen hit the nail on the head when he asked himself that question in silence. But he pushed those thoughts aside and concentrated on the meeting he was in at the time. He said, "Asuma, start your report. My 3 passed easily enough. Their goal was to pin me down long enough to draw blood, and at the 2-hour mark they succeeded," Asuma nodded. Of the 3, Ino is unquestionably the leader. It was going to take a lot of work to break her out of that mindset, but she can focus on the task at hand when necessary. She's loud, brash, and a fangirl, he sighed. I suppose her skills are passable enough. She can only use her mind transfer jutsu, and she is only moderately accurate when it comes to stealth. Shoji is a kind, quiet, and sensitive person. He follows the other 2 around and essentially does what they say. To be honest, he's not suited for the life of a shinobi. They would have had me at the hour mark, but Choji had refused to strike me. He said he didn't like hurting others. That's a major problem in our line of work. His skills are moderate from the academy reports. I can't verify them because Choji wasn't used for stealth. He can use one of his clan jutsus but can expand his body at will. Shikamaru is lazy, unenergetic but brilliant. Like Choji, he's a follower but he can take the lead when needed. He's a strategist, and I know for a fact that the academy test scores do not reflect his true abilities. However, as I said before, he's incredibly lazy and anything involving actual work is troublesome. He can use one of his clan's jutsus, but I think he may be able to learn a few more if I can get some motivation in the kid. Asuma finished his report with a small sigh. He would have to put in extra effort to get these kids in shape because they would require a lot of work. Hiruzen swallowed a sigh of disappointment. By no means were the few that passed perfect shinobi. With the expectation that her team would perform better, he gestured for Kurenai to start her report. With a nod, Kurenai started off, quickly putting the Hokage's hopes to rest. My team just made it through with a narrow victory. Their objective was to locate and apprehend me, which they accomplished with more luck than skill. Sasuke Uchiha is a solo performance. He finds it difficult to collaborate with others and feels that doing so would only impede his progress. He's strong for a genin, I'll give him that, but he rushed me head on and ignored the other two for the most of the test, despite the fact that he currently possesses little to no tracking abilities. I had once stopped to spar with him in light taijutsu, and he appeared to be very skilled in the family style. Additionally, he was able to employ the fire release, Grand Fireball Jutsu, and afterward, he was hardly tired. When we awaken his Sharingan and he gains some more jutsu under his belt, he'll be an excellent heavy hitter for the team. Sakura Haruno is very much like Ino without the ability to focus on the mission. She abandoned Shino to chase after Sasuke. Her skills are abysmal. Despite having a high aptitude for chakra control and genjutsu, I took her out of commission with ease when I used a D-rank genjutsu, she murmured. Since Sakura was next in line for Kunoichi of the Year, she assumed that she would be at a much higher level than what she was, but it appeared that Sakura was only at a higher level due to her book smarts. Shino is antisocial, but he's not a one-man show like Sasuke. He tried to get them to collaborate at first, but it didn't work out because Sakura followed Sakuku's lead and Sasuke believed he was going to slow him down. Shino is composed and reasonable, and because of his bugs, he is already skilled at tracking. He is undoubtedly a long-range fighter, even though as far as I know his bugs are feeding off his chakra network, preventing him from using any jutsu. Shino was the only reason they succeeded. When I ran away from Sasuke after our encounter, he realized he couldn't find me on his own, so he enlisted Shino's help to find me, and the two of them temporarily teamed up to capture me. Like Asuma, Kurenai concluded, Sakura was still unconscious. She knew she would have her work cut out for her. As he started his report, Kakashi managed to contain his laughter and said, "My adorable little genin were fantastic. I nearly had to overindulge in the brats." The other two Junin in attendance gave him a strange look as he beamingly said, "You're not kidding," Asuma said with a tone of surprise. "No, I'm not. A few times, the little brats almost killed me." He shivered as he imagined a spiraling ball in the palm of a chakra hand pointed at his stomach. Kurenai didn't think so. Kakashi was one of the village's strongest ninja. He could make genin at age 5, Chunin at age 6, and Junin at age 12. There was no way that 3 genin could compete with him and make him give it his all. Seeing the look of disbelief on Kurenai's face, Kakashi chose to elaborate, saying, "As you are all aware, my test is all about teamwork, and they passed with flying colors. Kiba is hot-headed, defiant, and seems to have a habit of rushing in, but due to his pack instincts he's able to take orders. Though, he may just be following instructions because he has a crush on Hinata," he said with thought. However, he didn't think the crush would last very long. Kurenai's eyebrow raised in response to Hinata's mention. She didn't think Kiba was worthy of her sister, in addition to being still irritated that she wasn't on her team. Although he didn't really get to use them, I hear he has an excellent nose that can be used for tracking. He's strong for a genin though, maybe high genin or low chunin in taijutsu. In combat, Hinata is composed, self-assured, and a little bit brutal, despite her soft-spoken nature and possible shyness. With those senbons of hers, she turned several wretched logs into pincushions. Aside from working incredibly well with Naruto, she showed off the chakra control that the Hyuga are known for when she displayed water-walking and terrifying accuracy. She managed to hit my Tenketsu with her senbon, and I'm guessing that she has a few more tricks up her sleeve. While he's with Hinata, Naruto is loyal, kind, and a little bit antagonistic toward Kiba. Kakashi really meant, I hope he doesn't reject me from his life. He seems to push away everyone that isn't Hinata, but I'm hoping that I can work on that and get him to open up to his fellow squad mates. He's defiantly not at Genin level from what I saw. Though she knew Naruto wasn't the dead last person he appeared to be, Kurenai still managed a smug smile at that and didn't really care for him despite Hinata's pleas. It wasn't personal, but she saw him as an annoyance that would only make Hinata feel worse. Being the little sister and heiress of a powerful clan, Hinata had only good intentions for her sister, and Naruto was clearly not the best. I haven't even seen half of his tricks yet, and he's much closer to Junin level. He really only employed one jutsu, which was an enhanced Rasengan, according to Kakashi. 3, 2, 1. What? How on earth do you think Naruto is at the Junin level? Kurenai almost screamed. If my estimation is right, he's definitely in the high B to high A rank, but I'm not saying that he's an SS ranked shinobi or anything. He might have something special up his metaphorical sleeve, as I mentioned before, since I haven't really seen any of his tricks, Kakashi laminated. Satisfied that there was one strong team among the group, Hiruzen puffed on his pipe and became even more so upon learning about Naruto. You say it's a Rasengan variation? How did he make it better? The entire village would have definitely noticed such a jutsu from the training grounds. Minato had theorized that the finished product of the Rasengan would be a S-ranked jutsu easily. If he had used it, the entire village would have known. Hiruzen asked, knowing that Naruto had not yet added an element. A jutsu like that should never be used on a comrade. He turned it into a long-range attack. Nearly hit me with it too. I should probably talk to him about that, he added after the fact. A long-range Rasengan was actually one of the variations that his late successor had tried to make but couldn't figure out, and Hiruzen seemed pleased with this. Though Asuma appeared thoughtful, having been a Junin for a much longer time than Kurenai, and having witnessed children half Naruto's age surpass him in strength. Was it true that Naruto had improved one of the Yondaimi's fabled techniques? If so, Kakashi was correct. Naruto was far superior to being a mere genin. Do you accept him, Asuma? Kurenai noticed the contemplative expression on his face and inquired, but before he could respond and run the risk of upsetting her, Kakashi cut him off. Is it really that difficult to accept? Kakashi questioned rhetorically, bothered by her doubts about Naruto's abilities and a little offended that she believed he was lying. Indeed, it is difficult to accept. Since he enrolled in the academy, he has been the dead last. Although I am aware that he has been holding back, it is absurd to suggest that he has been withholding his Junin abilities, I replied, earning a grumpy, one-eyed glare from Kakashi. I am not the only person in this village who has been pranked by Naruto. In this village, he has made a fool of Anbu, Junin, Chunin, Genin, and civilians. Is it really so unlikely that he would withhold his abilities in order to join Hinata's team? Kakashi inquired with a hint of annoyance. I won't believe it until I see it, Kurenai flatly corrected, her eyebrow twitching once more in irritation. So how about we give our adorable little Genin a spar? Kakashi suggested, team versus team, but Kurenai had already shook her head no. No team against team. Whether you are telling the truth about Naruto or not doesn't matter. At this point, my team is in disarray. Because of Hinata and Kiba, you would most likely still prevail even if he came in dead last. Genin versus Genin sounds good. In this manner, we are able to precisely compare their abilities with one another. Do you want in? She turned to face Asuma. She questioned, it might be beneficial for Choji to spar. After a moment of hesitation, Asuma said, sounds fine to me. We'll do it at the end of the week, Kurenai grinned. In this manner, it allows us both some time to become trained and discover our individual strengths. Kakashi turned to face the Hokage with a flippant, you're taking charge of what was my idea, but sure. Will that be all, Hokage-sama? Feeling a little ignored, Hiruzen sighed and nodded. That's going to be it. You've been fired. Flashback concludes when Kakashi explained the details of the match. Basically, it would be just like the ones they had in the academy, but this would be Kiba's first as a shinobi. Kiba began to cheer. With a small smile on her face, Hinata was eager to see how much her classmates had progressed since joining the shinobi forces. Although Naruto maintained an expression of impassivity, he was secretly eager to crush a particular teme because he would no longer have to hold back. Kiba, calm down. Naruto laid his head back on the table, stretching out his neck, which was starting to hurt from staring up at the sky. You'll wear yourself out, he said. Kiba scoffed, but nevertheless took a seat. Shortly after, their client arrived. He was an elderly, well-worn man who clearly had spent most of his life farming. Huh. Even though it was a little strange to see everyone hurling paintbrushes at one another at the same time, you three did a fantastic job. This is your salary. He handed Kakashi a small stack of bills and spoke in a grandfatherly voice, saying, try not to spend it all in one place. As he made his way back a short distance to his house, he called out to them. Biting back a sigh, Naruto eyed the bills. Unlike higher-ranked missions, the shinobi who finished the missions got paid directly by the client. They were paid so little, after all, that the inconvenience of using an intermediary was not justified. He groaned to himself, that's barely enough for 5 bowls of ramen. He knew that if he didn't start getting paid well soon, he would eventually have to turn to cannibalism or theft. Grumbling, he accepted his meager pay, but maybe he shouldn't have been surprised when Hinata handed him her stack of bills. This wasn't the first time she'd offered her pay to him. He smiled amiably at her, saying, Hinata-chan, keep it. I'm doing fine. Anyone who was thinking about cannibalism was definitely not okay, he lied. But instead of taking the bills out, Hinata gave Naruto-kun a worried but severe look and said, you're not okay, Naruto-kun. Your stomach rumbling is audible to me. As a clan heiress, I am. I don't need it nearly as much as you do, she remarked in a tone that suggested you would like it. With a sigh, Naruto turned to face Hinata after glancing down at the bills. Are you sure, Hinata-chan? Naruto asked. I know you don't like using your clan's money to buy things, and was met with a nod and a smile. Hinata smiled at Naruto, who blushed embarrassedly and accepted the bills. Kiba was watching the little exchange with great interest and a conflicted expression on his face, but they didn't even notice him. Afterwards at the 7th training ground, when Team 7 arrived at their training ground, they were taken aback to discover that the other 2 teams, well, Kakashi aside, had already arrived. It's late. We've been waiting for 2 hours, Ino yelled. Sakura and her friend yelled. Oh, apologies. Life's journey is full of detours and turns. We simply got lost, I suppose. I'm an amazing sensei, Naruto congratulated himself, looking incredibly proud of himself for beating Kakashi to the punch. Kakashi gave Naruto a pat on the head as the 2 Junin present glared bloody murder at him. Asuma turned to face his fellow Junin after they had all calmed down and said, so how are we going to do this? He inquired. Kakashi appeared to consider it for a while before saying, I dunno, picking numbers? Allow them to select their opponents? I asked out loud to himself. He looked down and saw that was how everyone else was reacting. Kiba and Sasuke both shot glances at Naruto, who was staring up at the clouds with Shikamaru, neither of them listening, while Ino glared at Sakura, who was surprisingly ignoring her. Sending a questioning glance at his allies, Kakashi thought, maybe we should let the rivals duke it out now so it won't cause problems down the road. Asuma and Kurenai nodded, thinking along the same lines as Kakashi. Now, here's how things will work. Ino versus Sakura. Shoji versus Hinata. Shino versus Shikamaru. Naruto versus Kiba and Sasuke in a handicap match, Kakashi declared, using the match to support his claim that Naruto was far superior to Genin. With a smug smile, Ino said to Sakura, are you prepared to lose? It irritated her that Sakura disregarded her and proceeded to a little clearing that would serve as the battleground. The rest of the audience looked on in idle curiosity, expecting a drawn-out brawl that, to be honest, gave Kunoichi a bad reputation. As the match's proctor, Asuma glanced at each participant and said, are you two ready? He asked and got nods in return. Begin? As he leapt back, he said. Sakura began by unleashing a torrent of shuriken and kunai on her long-standing adversary. Is that all you got, Billboard? Ino would have insulted further, but the sounds of horrified screams interrupted her. She was startled by the display of ruthlessness, but she dodged in time without getting hit. When Ino turned and saw what was causing the screams, her mind could only gape at what she was seeing. Right where she had escaped the flurry of kunai and shuriken was Sasuke, a bleeding, dying Sasuke. Abruptly, Ino bolted towards Sasuke and the group encircling him, whispering among themselves about what to do. Oh no, this isn't possible. Ino yelled to her fallen love, crouching down and crying over his wounded form. Tears flowed out of her eyes as she tried to stop the bleeding, but it was to no avail. Her attention snapped up to those around her. Get help. ACT now. If Sasuke hadn't weakly reached up and wiped away a tear, she would have continued to scream. He spoke weakly, spitting blood at every turn. Ino. Cough, have something. I have to tell you. Sasuke was too weak to speak, so Ino leaned down and her ear hovered over his mouth, feeling his hot breath tickle her ear as he said, When Ino pig. Ino's eyes blurred with more tears. Sasuke, sounding just like Sakura, spoke triumphantly. That's when the genjutsu broke, revealing to Ino that she was kneeling for nothing, Sakura's kunai at her throat. What? Ino inquired, perplexed. I placed you in a genjutsu that showed you your worst fear, Sakura said sarcastically, taking off her kunai as Asuma referred to her as the match's winner. Everyone, with the exception of her team, was shocked by how quickly the match went. They had not anticipated this at all. Whoa! Who would have imagined Sakura could win so quickly? Kiba exclaimed. I'm impressed that Sakura defeated Ino with hardly any effort, even though he was a little let down that he didn't get to witness a catfight between two attractive girls. Huh. That was practically a win right away. When did Sakura start to cause more trouble? Shikamaru questioned out loud. Sakura joyfully ran to her team after defeating her longtime rival, ignoring Ino's insults and comments that the fight was far from over. Sakura exuded happiness. As Sakura completely brushed past Sasuke and stopped in front of her sensei, everyone's mouths dropped. How did I do, Kurenai-sensei? With a tone akin to a child presenting their work to a parent, she questioned. Kurenai grinned at Sakura, saying, Well done, Sakura, at last, you're realizing your full potential. Her voice carried genuine pride as she spoke. Kurenai was relieved that Sakura's conversation had made sense. Retrospection. Kurenai bit back a frustrated sigh, looking at her genin. The kids were great on paper, but as it turned out, they were just two lone wolves and a fangirl, not the best combination for a team. You can all go except for you, Sakura, she said, pinching the bridge of her nose, threatening to break Sakura's habit of being a fangirl right then. Shino and Sasuke nodded before continuing their walk. After a while, Sakura turned to face her sensei, unsure of what she had done to warrant being held back, so she inquired, Did I do something wrong, sensei? Just to make sure. Why did you turn into a shinobi, Sakura? With a serious tone, Kurenai questioned. Sakura became confused by the question. Why did I become a shinobi? Because my dad was one before the Kyuubi killed him. I guess I wanted to honor him, she replied, her uncertainty obvious in her voice. Kurenai nodded, assuming the girl had turned shinobi in order to win over Sasuke. That's a good enough explanation, but do you really believe that the way you're acting honors him? She insisted, startling Sakura. With my current behavior. Sensei, what are you talking about? Sakura inquired, feeling offended and adopting an irate tone. I'm referring to your fangirl nonsense, Sakura. Are you really under the impression that by showing Sasuke your figure, you are honoring your father by completely disregarding your training? Do you really believe that starving yourself on a diet when you should be eating twice as much as a civilian honors your father? Are you even aware of the definition of a kunoichi? At the very end, Kurenai was practically screaming, but before Sakura could respond angrily, Kurenai let out a deep sigh of frustration. Do you know why there are only 3 times as many female ninja as male ninja, Sakura? Kurenai, who was prepared to do whatever it took to get Sakura to behave differently, asked in a very serious tone. Because sexual-related crimes are more common against women than they are against men in the field, Sakura said, her angry reply drying up in her mouth. This was standard information for all kunoichi to know. That's exactly what the textbook says, Kurenai said, nodding. Given this information, why have you not taken the appropriate safety measures to make sure that doesn't happen to you? With only curiosity and disappointment in her voice, she questioned, not with anger. Sakura stumbled for a moment before coming up with a swift response. Because Sasuke-kun will save me, she said firmly, as though it were a given. Sasuke will save you, Kurenai said, getting a nod in response. 100% of the time? One more nod. Kurenai grabbed Sakura's right breast firmly between her thumb and pointer finger's fingernails, through her shirt and bra, and gave her a vicious pinch before Sakura could even respond or defend herself. More than with pain, Sakura screamed, Sensei! Let me go! What are you doing? She cried out, attempting to wrench Kurenai's hand away, but her iron-like grip was getting tighter. Despite her dislike for having to hurt her student, Kurenai decided that it was better to suffer little than risk dying or becoming an object of desire for an enemy ninja. Why am I acting in this way? Where is he? Is a more pertinent question. Sakura had given up trying at this point. It seemed that the more she struggled to break free, the more her sensei pinched her, and all she could do was grit her teeth at the excruciating pain in her breast. Kurenai said as she increased the pressure. What? Sakura asked, tears welling up in her eyes from confusion and anger. Her voice was heavy with emotion. Where is Sasuke, as you claimed he would always come to your rescue? Kurenai inquired once more. As Kurenai went on, Sakura's realization struck her. You're helpless and he's not coming. Pinching your nipple wouldn't be the only thing I would be doing if I were an enemy shinobi. Invading you would be my action if I were an enemy shinobi. I would be passing you around to my friends as we ruthlessly violated you in ways that are beyond comprehension if I were an enemy shinobi. Kurenai's nails were almost touching at this point, and Sakura was barely holding back a scream as she spoke, applying pressure steadily to make her point. Sakura was crying uncontrollably now. It wasn't just that she was experiencing a searing pain in her breast, she also knew what Kurenai was going to say. And you would be entirely dependent on us. Your body is weak because you decided to forego physical training and diet. You didn't learn how to defend yourself because you chose to waste your time staring at some boy. Sakura broke down in tears as Kurenai let go of her hand and she began massaging her mistreated breast. With a sorrowful sigh, Kurenai patted Sakura's shoulder. Sakura, you have so much potential. You could be a fantastic medical ninja or a genjutsu expert, like me, with your chakra control. Don't waste all that talent, though, just to make a boy not like you. Kurenai comforted her upset student, saying, he's not worth it. No boy is. Although she felt bad about having to do it, in the long run, it was necessary to protect her. After her sobs stopped, Sakura was silent for a long while, feeling as though she had spit on her father's grave. She meant to be a shinobi first and try to impress Sasuke with her skills, but she knew that she had no skills to speak of, so she had blown off the entire physical aspect of being a shinobi so she could ogle Sasuke. How had she let her crush on Sasuke get in the way of her original goal? How had she veered so far off the path she had wanted to walk? Sakura took 30 minutes to gather her composure. Sensei, could you please teach me genjutsu? She inquired, determined to make up for lost time. If it meant giving up her crush on Sasuke, then fine. She was a shinobi first and needed to learn self-defense, otherwise she would experience what Kurenai had just described. Of course, be here an hour early for your first lesson, grinned Kurenai. End flashback. As Sakura's victory was celebrated by all, including Sasuke, Hinata and Choji made their way to the small field. Hinata gave Choji a small smile as they squared off, seeing his hesitation clearly. She reassured him, saying, you don't have to be afraid of hurting me, Choji. It barely affected Choji's nerves at all. He said, but I could though, I don't want to hurt my friends, with a confused expression on his face. Asuma-sensei had mentioned that sparring with friends would make you and them stronger, but Choji found it hard to really get past the hit your friends part. She smiled kindly and went into one of her stances, saying, Choji, you won't hurt me. I've been training with Naruto-kun for a very long time and he's very strong, so don't hold back, okay? Asuma chose to make the reward offer after Choji wavered. Choji, if you give this match your all, I'll buy you an all-you-can-eat buffet at your choice of restaurant. He leapt back and exclaimed, now, begin. Nothing happened for a moment, and then, surprisingly, Choji took action. He bellowed, expansion jutsu, as he unexpectedly grew into a big ball. Without warning, Hinata leapt backward by several feet, giving her enough space to avoid the impending danger. Human bullet tank was the next phrase to escape as Choji spun around and launched. To avoid Choji, Hinata leapt high into the air, her dojutsu activated, senbon between each knuckle. To her surprise, Choji was spinning so quickly that the needles just bounced off of him. Hinata had thrown her senbon, believing that he would be forced to stop spinning if he had a few senbons sticking out of him. As Hinata returned to earth with a graceful fall, her eyes narrowed and she began to consider several possible approaches. With an impressive turn, Choji charged Hinata once more, like a charging bull, but this time Hinata was ready. She leapt forward, surprising everyone, aside from Naruto, and then abruptly turned around to start throwing multiple volleys of seemingly endless senbon. Concerning himself with his crush, Kiba exclaimed, what's she doing? She's going to get crushed. The sound of Naruto scoffing was heard by all. What the heck is your problem? Aren't you worried that Hinata-chan's going to get hurt? Asked Kiba. Again, Naruto sighed. He pointed to the match and said, do you really have so little faith in Hinata-chan? Choji won't lay a finger on her. Just as Choji was about to crush her, Hinata made a sudden landing and turned around, attempting to slow down. With a sly smile on her face, Hinata took 2 elegant steps and ducked to the left. It appeared as though she was dancing like a ballerina rather than even dodging. Hinata made the younger girls shiver with jealousy, and Kiba said, wow. Hinata-chan sure is flexible. While sporting a twisted red flush on the bridge of his nose. He was just 12, but he was going through puberty, which meant twisted ideas about girls. Kiba heard a sound like knuckles cracking and turned to see Naruto giving his squadmate a death-threatening glare while also cracking his own knuckles. Continue that line of thought and I'll neuter you, dog breath. Kiba gave a loud gulp and turned around, perspiring profusely. Everyone was making jokes about him. With some effort to slow down, Choji raced past Hinata and strayed toward the trap she had set. Choji was spinning so fast that he was still able to see glimpses of the Senbon stick emerging from the earth and coming straight toward him. Even though Choji could repel objects like Senbon when he spun so quickly that they simply bounced off of him, he didn't believe he could roll over the needles without getting impaled. Naturally, he disengaged his expansion jutsu and soared over the needles when he got too close. The onlookers winced in support of Choji as he fell face down and continued to fall until he stopped completely, stopping nearly 30 yards from where he had stopped the jutsu. OWWW! Choji exclaimed, holding his face to protect it from the numerous tiny wounds that now covered his body as he staggered to his feet. Asuma asked, proud of himself for taking the lead but also thinking that Choji should probably give up while he was ahead. You okay, Choji? Asuma asked. Yeah. I'm fine, Choji responded, assuming that after this match, he would be eating Asuma-sensei broke. He assumed a fighting stance once more. Hinata stepped forward and asked, do you wish to continue? After giving it some thought, Choji shook his head negatively. He'd spent years learning from and being wiser than Shikamaru, so it had kind of rubbed off on him. Choji was aware that Hinata had countered his human bullet tank jutsu, which was actually the only ace he had. With the exception of his clan's jutsu, which he only knew about the academy, he was helpless against Hinata and was forced to resign. Hinata gave him a smile. With a glowing green hand, she began to massage Choji's body and heal his minor wounds. You did very well, Choji. Now let me take care of your wounds, she said as she assisted in getting him seated. Both Asuma and Kakashi were impressed, though the latter assumed Hinata had medical experience based on her remarks at the lake. So Kakashi apparently received a medic nin and an A- ranked genin. He was taken aback, but his expression quickly darkened. Some guys simply have it all, he thought as he observed his disorganized team. Even though it had only been a week, Asuma was aware that organizing his three would require a significant amount of work. Perhaps I'll follow Kurenai's lead and straighten Sakura out. When is this over? I'll ask her. Shikamaru and Shino left for the field, and Hinata and Choji returned after Hinata was pronounced the winner and had healed Choji. With a big smile, Kiba exclaimed, you did great, Hinata-chan. I knew you could do it. However, Hinata noticed Naruto mouthing the line that Kiba was lying behind his back. She said, thank you, Kiba, and then she sat down next to Naruto, who was essentially saying the same thing. As Kiba observed the small exhibit, a wave of jealousy shot through his chest. I'll make it clear to the Teme who is the boss here. He turned to watch Shikamaru and Shino's match and thought to himself. With one boy yawning and the other standing there, waiting for the match to start, Asuma cast her gaze between them. Asuma let out a sigh. He knew exactly how this was going to turn out. He exclaimed, begin, but made no attempt to leap back. Our favorite Nara said, I forfeit, just a fraction of a second later. All of them, with the exception of Asuma, Kakashi, and Naruto, had a shocked expression. That lazy son of a... Ino snarled, annoyed not only that her teammate was on her team but also that he could be so indolent that he would actually forfeit a match to avoid having to fight. Sakura agreed with her friend by nodding. Kiba bellowed fiercely, that's it, they didn't even fight. He had been curious to see how that fight would play out. Despite the fact that they were both long-range fighters, he was interested in finding the superior clan technique. Wow. Asuma was right, that kid lives up to his clan's reputation, Kurenai told herself. Hinata muttered to herself, I didn't know Shikamaru was that lazy, but her friend overheard her. Naruto remarked, it's not just because he's incredibly lazy that he quit, earning a few perplexed looks from those around him. With an air of secrecy, Kakashi asked, oh, you noticed too? Notice what, sensei? Kiba inquired, perplexed as to what on earth they could be discussing. Kakashi simply indicated that they ought to listen to Shikamaru's defense remarks by pointing at him. Asuma let out a sigh. In a frustrated voice, he questioned, really, Shikamaru? Even though he had anticipated that, it didn't make it any less annoying. Even though Shino's face was mostly covered, Shikamaru sighed as he noticed the unclean look he was receiving from him. How troublesome. I would have lost in the end no matter what, so why bother wasting all that time? Replied Shikamaru. Even though Shino knew exactly why Shikamaru was acting the way he was, he still raised an eyebrow. Shino and I are both long-range fighters, however, our styles are very different. My shadow binding jutsu can hold Shino down, and maybe I could force him to surrender, though the odds of that are unlikely, but I cannot bind every single Kakaichu inside of him. He could easily send out a swarm as I held him down, since they respond to his will, and suck me dry of chakra, Shikamaru said. Shino gave a nod. Ever since he learned who he would be facing, that had been his plan. Asuma let out a sigh. He declared, Shingo wins, feeling ashamed that none of his teammates had won. Everyone cheered Shino on for his victory as he and Shikamaru rejoined the group, and they all laughed when Ino started verbally abusing Shikamaru. He mumbled something about troublesome blondes and stood there listening to his teammates yell. He tried to defend his reasoning, but it was not clear. But two genin were ignoring them, heading toward the center of the clearing beside Naruto, who appeared to be perfectly content to engage in combat with two adversaries. Though for different reasons, the two genin were thinking along the same lines. I am eager to defeat Naruto Teme. Hinata-chan will realize he's a complete loser and agree to go out with me once I do. Kiba excitedly thought, demonstrating his complete ignorance of the other gender. I get to fight you again, Naruto, at last. Remembering when Naruto had thrown a match for the first time, Sasuke thought, you better stop holding back so I can crush you and prove that I am superior. Retrospection. The teachers allowed Sasuke to spar once more, this time standing in the center of the circle. Naruto had not spoken to his elder brother or broken his arm for nearly a month. The boy's behavior changed so quickly that many were taken aback. It was almost like seeing a different child. His haughtiness had been significantly reduced. Even after all these years, it still existed and only rarely showed up. Sasuke became friendlier, smiled more often, and even made some friends. His derogatory remarks about others had stopped, but he continued to make fun of Naruto, Hinata, and Shino, three young people. However, the reason he mocked them now was very different. He was still a little bit of a bully, but it was a combination of his inferiority and superiority complex. Despite his outward lack of interest in the action, Naruto was secretly yelling at the injustice of what he was about to do as he entered the center of the ring. Iruka shifted her gaze between the two kids. He said to the two kids, make the symbol showing that you wish to spar, and they did as he said. I'll prevail this time. To keep Hinata-chan safe. I've got to get over it. Begin. In the midst of a blow-for-blow battle between Sasuke and Naruto, Naruto appeared lethargic in contrast to his previous battle with the Uchiha. Sasuke appeared to be traveling slowly to Naruto. He genuinely thought he could win while wearing a blindfold since his movements were so predictable. It was quite difficult to lose. 6-year-old Sasuke was confused and enraged when Naruto made eye contact with him and raised a lethargic arm to deflect a blow. Sasuke became enraged when he realized that Naruto was holding back. This was the child who easily broke his arm. Why did he start moving slowly? After taking a few steps back with his heel just a foot or two from the line, Naruto allowed a punch to land in his chin. With a growl, Sasuke unleashed several punches and kicks. Playing the scared fool, Naruto fell off the ring and onto his butt. Everyone laughed at that, with the exception of Hinata, who couldn't understand why Naruto allowed himself to lose. Iruka exclaimed, winner Sasuke Uchiha, wondering the same thing as Hinata. Sasuke's admirers went crazy as they complimented him on his performance and insulted Naruto, calling him out for cheating in their previous battle. Iruka gave the command, now make the harmony symbol. Feeling like a complete idiot, but also relieved that he had kept Hinata safe, Naruto stood up and approached Sasuke, holding out his hand with 2 fingers, inviting him to shake it. But Sasuke had other ideas. Sasuke took Naruto's hand with a slap. Sasuke growled, offended, what's your problem? Why did you let me win? With a glare, Naruto remained silent. Should he open his mouth, a string of remarkable expletives would flow from it. Again, Iruka gave the order, Sasuke, that's enough. Make the harmony symbol. Holding out his hand, Sasuke interlocked his fingers with Naruto's, who started to squeeze them as hard as he could while grinding his teeth. Squeezing back, Sasuke winced but vowed to discover why Naruto had held back. Close the flashback with a light wind rustling their hair, the 3 of them squared off in the clearing. Turning, Sasuke faced Kiba. This fight is between me and him, Mutt. Stay out of my way, he commanded, giving a glare in the process. Kiba placed Akamaru down, smirking. He growled angrily, as if, Teme. You're mine, in response. Naruto let out a sigh. He said angrily, upsetting them both, it's really tough being this handsome. I have all the beautiful women and apparently men fighting over me. Kiba yelled, "Shut up, idiot, I'm not gay," as he readily allowed Naruto's remarks to affect him. "But Sasuke Tsked. I want to fight you one-on-one so I can prove that I'm stronger than you are, and so you can't use the excuse it was 2-on-1 when I crush you," he said bluntly. Naruto laughed. "Oh, you're going to crush me? You seem to be forgetting the fact you've won every fight we've had since we were kids because I allowed you to, right?" he asked with a sarcastic voice. It was different from the kind but mocking tone he used with Kiba, though. No, this was the kind of jeering you applied to a person you detested. It was brimming with rage and full of disdain. Sasuke let out a grunt. "I'm going to win because I train harder than you do and that makes me stronger than you," Sasuke stated in a serious manner. That was then. Naruto laughed loudly. He mocked, sneering at the word noble. "So you train harder than I do? I thought training would be below your noble blood?" With narrowed eyes, Sasuke wanted to lash out at Naruto for disrespecting his clan, but he decided to respond to his question instead. Sasuke replied, "No, before Itachi went insane. He was right that hard work pays off more than talent, and I work harder than anyone to achieve my ambition. That's why you won't lay a single scratch." But as he did, a sudden gust of wind and a flash of movement revealed that Sasuke's shorts were the same, just below a belt loop, and his shirt had a large cut from the sleeve down. When Sasuke saw his now ruined clothes, his eyes widened. Kiba let out a few, "Holy shits," before Sasuke realized that he had only broken off the belt loop from his shoulder to his knee, but the cut was continuous and shallow. It was so scary, maybe, even though the cut wasn't even deep enough to draw more than a drop of blood. "Sorry about that. You left yourself so wide open and I couldn't resist." "You were saying something about a scratch?" Naruto replied with a low voice. It contained neither teasing nor mocking. Sasuke was only getting a sneak peek at what waited for him from Naruto. When Sasuke looked up from his clothing, he saw Naruto wielding a wooden sword that, aside from the guard, resembled a genuine katana. Though Naruto cut Sasuke's clothes with a wooden sword made of a unique kind of wood that could conduct chakra, he was unaware of this. "Wow. I didn't even see him move," Choji exclaimed, obviously amazed by Naruto's recent actions. Though Ino's words were feeble, she was secretly salivating at the thought that her true love was about to be exposed due to a slender piece of cloth. "He hurt Sasuke-kun," she complained. Sakura did not reveal her inner thoughts, but she did agree with her friend. Shikamaru remained silent, but he was much more focused on the game. Shino was following suit. "I blinked and missed it. That speed. Even though the game hasn't even begun, his speed alone doesn't make him Junin level," with shock, Kurenai thought. With a small smile, Hinata expressed her happiness that Naruto was finally able to face Sasuke, something he had been wanting to do for years, and that everyone was impressed by how quickly her crush could move. She was eager to see how they would respond when they realized how powerful Naruto truly was. Asuma gave a few quick blinks. He thought, "Damn, the kid's fast," and then turned to face an enraged Sasuke. His question was met with a glare. "Do you want to change shorts before the match begins? Yours are hanging by a thread," he said. He sighed and yelled, "Begin," before lunging back a few yards. Sasuke left right away, determined to exact revenge on Naruto for destroying his clothes. But Naruto had an eat-shit grin on his face as he avoided every blow by a hair. "Is this really all you have, Sasuke?" "I'm not impressed," laughed Naruto, his smile growing as he realized how much Sasuke was being hurt by his remarks. With a mighty growl, Sasuke accelerated his punches and kicks, intending to strike Naruto with all of his might, but Naruto easily sidestepped each and every one of them. He waited long enough for Sasuke to believe he had him beat, but in the final millisecond, he would slightly move his body, causing Sasuke's blow to miss. It was both humiliating and upsetting. Sasuke merely grunted and then grinned. Kiba cried out, "Suga," as he transformed into a human drill and swung his weapon at Naruto's back. To everyone's surprise, though, Naruto planted his feet and grabbed Kiba as the Kiba drill got closer. Kiba continued to spin so quickly that it tore through both Naruto's skin and glove, but he held on, showing no signs of pain at all. Breathless, Kurenai exclaimed, "Holy shit." Since she wanted Kiba on her original team, she had done some research on him and was aware of how terrible his Suga was. Your skin was torn by a passing blow, but it was shredded by a direct hit. In an instant, her doubts about what Kakashi had said were gone. She was certain that if she took one of those, let alone stopped it with her bare hand, she would be in complete disarray. The genin, like the Kurenai, were awestruck by Naruto. perhaps with the exception of Hinata, who was aware of his formidable strength. Both Shino and Shikamaru were re-evaluating Naruto. Shikamaru now perceived Naruto as much more problematic than he had been previously, while Shino now found Naruto to be even more mysterious. Both Sakura and Ino gaped openly. Unlike Kurenai, they were unaware of the specifics, but they had seen enough of Kiba's use to know that it was extremely potent. Both Hinata and Kakashi were taken aback that Naruto decided to use his hand to halt the attack. Kakashi was more taken aback than Hinata because she was aware of how careless he was. But they both knew that he was free to stop holding back, since the Hokage had granted him permission. Perhaps he was just experimenting with his newfound freedom. Naruto said, "Damn. That stung more than I thought it would," as he threw Kiba aside. Looking down at his hand, he was not too shocked to see bone where it had come into greater contact with Kiba's rapidly rotating head. Sasuke just gave Naruto a shocked look. The thing he'd just seen had dumbfounded him completely. As Kiba had previously used his Suga and Gatsuga on him during some of the later academy spars, he was familiar with the sensation of the human drill. That begged the question. How in the world did he just use one hand to stop it? Kiba, who appeared equally as shocked as Sasuke, landed a short distance away on his feet. Kiba yelled, "What the heck are you?" That was too much for even his mother to throw away as Suga. Without responding, Naruto directed his chakra towards his injured hand, causing the muscle and skin to rapidly cover the exposed bone. Naruto couldn't heal other people, so his chakra control was far too weak for medical ninjutsu. It resembled a Keke Genkai more. Though there were limits, the faster the healing, the more chakra he focused on. Kiba. Stay out of this. I'm crushing Sasuke right now. I don't want my teammate getting harmed because you were in the way, Naruto said in a serious tone that nearly made Kiba shudder. Kiba wasn't just scared by his tone, though he wouldn't acknowledge it. His eyes were the source. They were not sorry. When Naruto declared that he would crush Sasuke, he meant it. Kiba genuinely questioned what Sasuke had done to enrage Naruto so much. Naruto turned to face a recuperating Sasuke without waiting to see Kiba's response. Naruto gave his pretend sword a gentle tap on his shoulder. With a sickeningly sweet tone, Naruto said, "Teme. It's nothing personal." Well, that's a total lie. It's completely personal. Anyway, I hope you're ready to meet the rest of your clan. It sounded like a predator who decided to play with its prey a little before consuming it in its entirety. Abruptly disappearing, Naruto reappeared just in time to deliver a devastating backhand to Sasuke's jaw. Too stunned to put his feet under him, Sasuke flew in the direction Naruto had sent him and landed on his face nearly a dozen yards away. I should be happy that I refrained from hitting him. As he slouched to Sasuke, who was standing back up, Naruto thought, if he were a civilian, his neck would have broken. Shinobi's use of chakra strengthened their bones, muscles, tendons, and other medical components to an incredible extent. That's why a civilian would be a bloody mess if thrown through a wall, but a shinobi would just brush themselves off. Stopping a few feet away from Sasuke, Naruto asked, "One slap and you're already done?" The place where Naruto had struck him was already starting to swell on his face. Sasuke, infuriated by the remark, launched another punch, but Naruto deflected it with a small flick of his pretend sword before stabbing him in the stomach. It hurt so much even though it didn't pierce his skin. After swatting the wooden blade aside, Sasuke unleashed a barrage of blows on Naruto. He was determined to give the blonde at least one clean hit, but every kick or punch was countered by a blow from Naruto's weapon. When Sasuke threw a left hook, the blade hit his elbow instead. He swung the wooden sword, breaking his wrist as he lashed out. He tried to kick out, but missed, taking a blow to his kneecap instead. His embarrassment and rage were growing stronger, and he could already feel the bruises starting. How come he couldn't hit him? After hours of training, he was unable to even touch Naruto in his quest to exact revenge on his clan. Though he now realized he was mistaken, he was adamant that he had trained harder than the blonde, harder than any genin, and harder than most Junin. Sasuke surmised that Naruto wasn't even close to his actual strength, given the mocking smile on his face and the fact that he was in a whole other league. Naruto asked, "Don't you have any other tricks up your sleeve?" as he skillfully sidestepped a blow and launched a barrage of blows towards Sasuke's back and ribs. After stopping his attack and gaining some distance, Sasuke growled and flew through the hand signs for one of his family's signature jutsus. A hand on Kurenai's shoulder stopped her in her tracks as she attempted to stop Sasuke before things got out of control. With a start, she turned to face Kakashi, who was swaying his head. "Don't stop them." Naruto especially needs to get this out of his system, said Kakashi. Kurenai, puzzled as to why Kakashi himself wasn't intervening, exclaimed in a ridiculous voice, "He's trying to kill your student, Kakashi." Kakashi gave a headshake. With a lazy tone, he ordered, "Just watch and don't interfere." She eased up and returned her focus to the match. He yelled, "Fire release! Grand Fireball Jutsu!" as flames surrounded Naruto's position. Before canceling the jutsu to prevent exhaustion, Sasuke maintained the flames for an impressive 30 seconds. He looked into the residual smoke to see if he had captured Naruto as he regained control of his breathing. When the smoke eventually cleared, it was nearly a minute later, and to his surprise, Naruto had vanished. He thought incoherently that fireball wasn't hot enough to turn him to ash. "Whatcha lookin' at, Teme?" asked Naruto, supporting himself on Sasuke's shoulder. Without delay, Sasuke pulled out a kunai and attempted to slay Naruto, but Naruto grabbed his wrist before he could complete the cut. He said, "I think I've played with you enough, Uchiha scum," and made a loud snapping sound with his wrist as he squeezed and twisted Sasuke's. When Sasuke let out a pained cry, a knee to the stomach muffled it. Naruto released Sasuke's broken wrist by grabbing his hair and pulling while the man knelt down. "Hard. Oh no you don't, Sasuke. I still have 7 years of bullshit I have to pay you back for." Naruto struck Sasuke's arms and body with his now empty fist, dropping his bokken to the ground. Kurenai left to put an end to this. Even though it was obvious that Naruto had won this fight, Kakashi once more stopped her. He said, "Don't get involved," while observing Naruto defeat the final, loyal, Uchiha. "Kakashi, you can't be serious. Sasuke's getting pummeled. We have to step in before he dies," asked Kurenai. In response, Hinata spoke on behalf of her sensei and said, "Kurenai-Nisan, Naruto-kun won't kill Sasuke." Feeling a little betrayed that her little sister hadn't supported her, Kurenai whipped around at her. She gestured to what was now merely a one-sided beating and said, rhetorically, "What do you mean? Aren't you watching the match?" As Kiba sat down, he said, "She means that Naruto is just playing with the Teme. If he wanted him dead, then he would be." Kakashi arched an ear. "It doesn't seem like you, so did you surrender?" he asked. Kiba let out a sigh. "Naruto took on my strongest technique and it did absolutely nothing to him. I might be a little slow sometimes, but I'm not an idiot. If I tried to keep fighting, Naruto would have put me out of commission so he could take on the Teme," he stated with a sigh. It appears that his scheme to court Hinata would not succeed. Hinata gave a nod. "Naruto-kun won't kill Sasuke," she insisted. With a nervous look, Kurenai turned to watch Naruto battering Sasuke when he punched Sasuke so hard in the stomach that Sasuke's shirt tore off and he flew several feet. She said, "No, I'm sorry, but I can't in good conscience let this go on," and then she vanished in a shunshin. Kakashi let out a sigh. "I hope she knows that Naruto's not going to be the one upset." With indifference, Naruto approached the bruised and battered Uchiha. Kurenai ordered Naruto from behind, saying, "That's enough, Naruto." Glaring at him from behind was Hinata's older sister figure. He continued to hold on to the frayed edges of Sasuke's shirt and raised an eyebrow. Just as he was going to answer, Sasuke coughed up blood and barely turned over on his side. With a sigh, Naruto threw the ripped shirt onto his defeated foe. He said in a worn-out voice, "I guess you're right. This wasn't even fun," and started to move away. It wasn't retaliation, despite what some may claim about the merciless way he took down Sasuke. It was payback. Naruto had just dealt Sasuke a broken bone, a cut, and a bruise, all of which he deserved. Heck, Naruto could not bear much more, even though he deserved a hell of a lot more. Hearing a weak voice stop them, Naruto started to walk back to the others, walking past Kurenai, who was giving him her best. "You should feel terrible about what you just did, look." With difficulty getting to his feet, Sasuke yelled, "Stop. I'm not done with you yet." With a sigh, Naruto came to a stop as Kurenai hurried over to her student's side. Kurenai started, "Sasuke, stay down you," but Sasuke slapped Kurenai's hand away before he could rise. Naruto interrupted him by kicking him in the face. "Don't touch me, I have to prove that the Uchiha. This isn't a movie where you can win by sheer willpower. If you get back up and threaten Hinata or me again, I will end you. Stop being naive, you can't win, so stay down. I'm so over your conceit and haughtiness. Sasuke, you are not unique. The chances of you killing your brother are extremely slim, and you are not a prodigy like your brother. At the rate you're advancing, it will be 1,000 years before you could manage to lay a finger on Itachi. That's the truth. And do you know why you'll never kill him? Asked Naruto. Nothing was heard. You say you train hard and that makes you think you don't need anyone else, but you are so wrong that you should get an award. You can only go so far on your own, Tem, and you've already reached that point. That's because you're too fucking arrogant and prideful to accept help. The harsh reality is that you cannot kill Itachi on your own, even if you sincerely want to, and I assume you do. The only thing you'll be able to do if you carry on as you are now is bleed on Itachi. Naruto concluded angrily, sighed, and tucked his hands into his pockets as his mock sword vanished in a cloud of smoke. He declared, I'm done with this, and left for the town, Hinata trailing behind to make sure he was alright. Despite Kurenai's cries for him to remain on the ground, Sasuke struggled to his feet as he started to consider what Naruto had said. He said, I'm going to the hospital, shoving everyone aside as he started to limp toward Konoha's hospital. Upon seeing this, Ino hurried to assist the unconscious Uchiha, but he refused to cooperate. Before long, every Genin member had disappeared, leaving only the Junin. So, do you still believe I lied? As he read his favorite book, Kakashi questioned. Kurenai sighed, yeah, but didn't this turn into a mess? I asked, and got 2 grunts in response. Kurenai abruptly turned to face Asuma, saying, why didn't you end the match sooner? She insisted, making Asuma sigh. Fights can be classified into 3 categories: fights to preserve life, fights to end life, and fights to preserve your dignity. The final one is the kind you leave alone, he remarked, pulling out a cigarette. Kurenai raised an incomprehensible eyebrow and motioned for Asuma to elaborate. Taking a big puff, Sasuke was fighting for his clan's pride and Naruto was fighting to regain lost pride with the Uchiha incident. Kurenai winced when she heard about Naruto's stay with the Uchiha clan, as if she never remembered it. I didn't want to jump in because not only would it be a major insult against their pride, but it's better that they deal with it now than when they're both high-ranking shinobi, though Naruto was a bit stronger than I anticipated, he said with a sigh. She hesitated, then turned to face Kakashi, who had already begun to respond to her question before she had the chance to ask it. Yes, that's why I told you not to get in the way, she said. Even the Hokage couldn't shield Naruto from the ensuing shitstorm if he killed the final devoted Uchiha, so Naruto wouldn't kill Sasuke. They needed to let out their frustration, more Naruto than Sasuke. Turning the page, Kakashi thought to himself, it looks like Naruto let most of his out, but since the fight was so one-sided, Sasuke's anger might either fester or vanish with that little talk. Kurenai nodded and said, so it doesn't matter that I saved my student from additional pain. Well, not in every case. It's possible that you caused Sasuke to become enraged because you believed he needed to be saved. Thus, we might have a considerably more violent and reclusive Sasuke than we currently have, Kakashi pondered, then clarified to Kurenai, I guess it's a guy thing. Kurenai's shoulders slumped, not sure she could handle 2 students who were completely antisocial, and she wished with all her heart that Naruto's words had pierced Sasuke's thick skull. Kakashi smiled at her, saying, let's hope for the best. In an attempt to slow his beating heart, Naruto took a slow breath. As he moved, sweat trickled off his brow and body, converging at his feet to form a puddle. His body was covered in dozens of wounds that gushed blood. The blood combined with his perspiration turned the puddle a pinkish red color. But since Naruto was wearing a blindfold, he was unable to see this. He wore plugs that completely blocked out sound, so he was unable to hear. He exhaled with the same composure, using his other senses, mostly his touch sense, to compensate for his loss of vision and hearing. Moments passed, and then he sensed it, a faint rumble coming from a short distance to his left. He quickly shifted his body to avoid the projectile that was heading straight for him. He went back to where he had been, only to have to duck 2 more in quick succession. He continued in this pattern for several minutes, feeling the faint vibrations before he had to dodge. He hit many, but he also took a lot of hits. A sharp vibration on his wrist caused Naruto to sigh with relief as he tore off his blindfold and earplugs. He winced at the unexpected light as he opened his eyes. Aside from the blood stains, the room he was in was completely white and had about 100 circular holes spaced at regular intervals. Glancing down at his body covered in paint, Naruto counted the stains that nearly covered his entire body. There were 38 direct hits, 22 heavy marks, and light scrapes remaining. Considering he had spent the last hour and a half dodging balls covered in paint, not bad at all. Naruto was honing all of his senses, including reaction time. The room held 100 balls that would shoot out, each painted a different color so Naruto could gauge how hard he was hit. If he dodged, the balls would return to the hole and be reused, and if he didn't, well, that was obvious. The exercise would end when it ran out of rubber balls, which it would keep shooting. Right now, Naruto's best time was 1 hour and 55 minutes. Naruto dropped his ruined training clothes on the floor and walked toward the door, revealing a silver skin-tight shirt and black spandex shorts. Before leaving the room, he created a few clones and had them all moan as they cleaned. As he slipped into the night, he whistled a little melody. It was about 2 years ago that he discovered the hidden base. There were rooms for everything he needed in this expansive network of subterranean tunnels. For training purposes, he had to remodel a few rooms, but he left the majority exactly as the previous owner had. Hello, Orochimaru. The base, which Naruto claimed to have visited shortly before leaving Konoha, was one of his numerous underground hideouts that he had dispersed throughout the elemental nations. Naruto, as previously stated, remodeled multiple rooms. Mostly the ones that weren't employed in dreadful experiments. He either sealed off or left the remaining portions unaltered. He remodeled a few dozen training rooms, including the one he was in right now, where they trained in a broad range of skills. He built a kitchen that was well equipped, but he was currently short on food because of his voracious appetite and inability to get money to buy food. His library was large enough to rival Konoha's library. He collected books in a variety of methods for his personal library. If he was ever employed, he would look for any good books, whether or not they had anything to do with ninjas, and steal some of them. He copied others from the library of Konoha. He had been sending clones to copy books and scrolls for the past 2 years, and on occasion, when the sky got dark, he would slip in and copy a jutsu or two from the higher-ranked sections. But he left the science room unattended. Naruto left the miserable place intact, even though it might have been morally dubious to do so. He also frequently used the place for experiments. Even with its illness, Orochimaru was a talented scientist with well-stocked labs. With no idea where to find even half of the items in the science room, Naruto left it exactly as it was and made very different uses of it. While Naruto concentrated on assisting shinobi in their day-to-day activities, Orochimaru experimented on humans in an attempt to obtain immortality and bloodlines. He created ration bars that provided you with enough nutrition for a day and food pills with manageable side effects. He created many other things that were helpful for their line of work, including pills that would keep you awake. He was still evaluating the long-term impacts of each one as well as the effects of continuous use. None of them were presently offered in open markets. But after those were thoroughly tested, he would present them to Gigi. He was reluctant for another reason, though. The elderly Hokage would question how and where he produced these miracle medications. The trail might have led here when he pitched them. Naruto had spent the entire previous year alone in this location. This was a place of secret training where he honed his skills. Only Hinata and possibly Gigi knew its location. It had been cleared of the chemicals and bodies that Orochimaru had used when he had discovered it. Naruto was therefore certain that the elderly Hokage was aware of its existence but lacked the manpower to put an end to it. Naruto came to the conclusion that Gigi ranked the base last on his list because of the Kyuubi attack, which destroyed a third of Konoha's forces, and Orochimaru's defection, which cost Konoha one of their strongest and several of his pawns. He just boarded it off and appeared to have forgotten about it because he lacked the time and manpower to hold the place. Naruto had happened upon the location by accident. Hinata was ambling through the woods, heading to a sparring match, when he saw the genjutsu. He initially believed that his eyes were just playing tricks on him, but he was able to dispel the genjutsu with a rather strong chakra surge. The smell of decay and stale air had hit him as soon as he stepped inside the long, sealed-off hideout. Naruto, then 11 years old, decided to take ownership of the base after exploring it. With the aid of numerous shadow clones, he cleaned the entire place, and by trial and error, he repaired numerous rooms that he intended to use. The work had taken several months, nearly a full year, but that was mainly because of one room. Naruto was going to walk into that room. When Naruto came to a dead end, he turned to face the door that was in his way. This door, in contrast to the others lining the dimly lit hallways, was a massive double door constructed from the strongest oak wood. It looked like a gateway to another realm because of the hundreds of intricate seals that covered its surface. But a seal master only had to glance at them to know that was not the purpose of the seals. They were designed to hold something. After biting his thumb, Naruto wiped some blood in a tiny circle above the handle. The seal activated and glowed an unsettling blue as Naruto's blood rested for a brief moment before being absorbed into it and opening the door. The doors swung open, letting light grow from the crack between them. As Naruto entered the light, the doors shut behind him. The doors clicked behind him as Naruto winced at the bright lighting in the room once more. He made a mental note to address that later. He looked around the room as his eyes grew accustomed to the bright lighting. As was already mentioned, the space was extremely light. Instead of coming from a single source, light appeared to leak from the walls. The room was enormous as well, with a dome ceiling that gave off an illusion of being 4 stories high. But hundreds of thousands of fine seals lapped over one another on the dome, reducing the room's brightness. Chakra suppression seals, sound-blocking seals that prevented all sound from entering the room, contaminate seals, regeneration seals, anti-damaging seals, and so on and so forth were among the seals available. Having spent roughly 9 months creating this room, Naruto was quite proud of it. That incorporated the thousands of clones who collaborated with him. You could unleash the Kyuubi inside this room and the outside world would never know because it was so secure and private. Strangely enough, that had been the room's original intent. Naruto's own creation, which had taken him more than a month to create, was visible when he looked down at the center of the room. Using the foul chakra of the Kyuubi, he made a shadow clone, though at first he had no real plans for it. All he wanted to do was wait and see. He used the clone for training after realizing that it was very different from its cousins. The clone looked sickly because of his grayish-white skin. Naruto thought it was cool that its blonde hair turned black at the tips, and that its red eyes were similar to Kyuubi's. Naruto thought it was pretty cool that he had a tail as well, but it was more akin to a lizard's than a fox's. The clone's disposition was far from ideal. The normal clones of Naruto were nearly exact replicas of the man himself, with the same height, features, and disposition. That's because he created them with his chakra. But the clone was twisted when he used the Kyuubi's chakra. It demanded power, destruction, and bloodshed. For this reason, in addition to sealing it inside this chamber, Naruto had it pinned at the middle by dozens of chains that were secured with chakras and covered in suppression seals. Naruto asked the named clone, "Yo, Mema, you up for a spar?" As the clone looked up and gave him a menacing, low growl. Naruto thought he could get away with referring to his clones as such, but Mema had a distinct personality, so he gave him a name. Mema nodded sharply, his eyes narrowing in willpower. Naruto put a hand on Mema's seal on his stomach and started to pump Kurama's chakra into him, all while maintaining the same arrogant smile. Kurama had consented to this training regimen for several reasons. Initially, it was an opportunity to break free from Naruto's seal in case he made a mistake. Second, Naruto grew more powerful. Kurama didn't want Naruto to die, even though he was still a long way from considering Naruto a friend. Naruto had shown him the utmost compassion since his father countless years ago. He didn't want Naruto to perish in order to obtain his freedom, but he still yearned for it. Nevertheless, Kurama would seize the chance, even if it meant losing Naruto's life, if there was no other option. "How about we kick this up a notch, Mema? 3 tails is getting pretty boring," Naruto said, his smile growing as he drew more of Kurama's chakra than usual. Mema smiled back at him, but it was tinged with hate and malice. Kakashi read his favorite book and hummed to himself. He was headed to a cafe where he was meant to meet Kurenai and Asuma. They'd agreed to get together once a week, given mission constraints, to talk about how their teams were doing. That, after all, was Asuma's justification when he presented the concept to them. Asuma only wanted some time to win Kurenai over, but he had to use sly tactics because she would not accept his advances for drinks. Kakashi had plenty of time to speak with Kurenai without interruption because he was never less than 2 hours late for anything that wasn't required. Naturally, Kakashi estimated that he would only be late by roughly 30 minutes. He needed to pass the time in some way, and if that meant interfering with Asuma's romantic life, then so be it. The small bell on the handle jingled as Kakashi entered the cafe through the front door. Asuma looked up from where he was standing at the sound, and Kakashi could almost see his hopes crumble. Fufu seemed to be making some progress with Kurenai, Kakashi mused to himself, giving himself a mental pat on the back for a job well done. With a casual greeting, "Yo," he slid into the seat beside Asuma. Before they got to work, the 2 Junin gave each other a friendly greeting back. Kurenai began, "So, I heard your team finally got the required amount of D-rank missions," glancing at Kakashi. "Yep, They finished them off a couple of days ago. I'm just looking for a suitable C-rank mission to get their feet wet, Kakashi said, grinning broadly at Kurenai as he turned the page and nodded. Kurenai and Asuma nodded, understanding that Kakashi meant to find a suitable mission so the genin could get their first kill. Kakashi therefore sought out missions with a high bandit risk and little chance of anything more. Kurenai knit her brows in concern and said, I know you're there sensei, but it hasn't even been a month, isn't it a little soon? A genin's career could end abruptly if they were unable to handle their first kill, which happened too soon. The majority of Junin senseis typically required 4 to 6 months to make their first kill. Maybe, but they're tough. The only one I have any concerns about is Hinata, so I'll be sure to notify you when it happens, Kakashi replied with another eye smile, nodding in understanding of Kurenai's worries. Kurenai thanked Asuma with a nod and then inquired about any updates regarding his team. There have. Ino asked me to start training the team seriously, and from what Inoichi told me, she's learning more clan techniques as well. I guess being defeated by Sakura really got to her, Asuma said while drinking his coffee. Kurenai asked, and your other two? Asuma appeared to be contemplating it. Shikamaru still seems as unmotivated as ever, but Choji seems to be less inclined to hold back. Though, once he thinks he's going to hurt Ino or Shikamaru, he tries to stop himself, he said. Although that was a commendable quality, Choji stopped too soon. If you felt that you were going to hurt a friend, you should stop. In a perfect world, you would stop right before so your partner could benefit the most from the training. But Choji halted almost 10 seconds ahead of schedule, allowing Shikamaru and Ino ample opportunity to retaliate. Kurenai sipped her tea and nodded. It appeared that the teams of all the others were winning. With a perverse giggle, Kakashi turned the page and asked, how are your cute genin? She let out a deep, dejected sigh after defeating the tick that was about to devour her head. Asuma inferred, I take it that things aren't going well, while he prodded her on. Sakura's progressing excellently. While she's still far behind in the physical aspects of being a shinobi, her progress in genjutsu is impressive. She even started to dabble in medical ninjutsu after she saw Hinata. I'm not sure how much progress she's made, but by judging from the smile I get every time I ask, I'd say she's coming close to mastering the basics. Kurenai said with a great deal of confidence in her tone. She was perfectly entitled to be. Few could claim to have turned a troubled kid into a budding shinobi with a promising future. Red in the cheeks, Asuma coughed into his hand, recalling what Kurenai had told him about what she had done to make Sakura right. Kurenai noticed Asuma's embarrassed expression and smiled a little before saying, Shino is progressing steadily. His tracking skills are progressing, but he seems more focused on increasing the size of his hive as well as his variety of insects. He's still as stoic as ever, but he made a joke the other day, well, more of a dry wit comment, but it's progress. So I'm guessing that long sigh in the beginning was because of Sasuke. Kakashi guessed. So I'm guessing that Naruto's words didn't get through to him. Asuma asked Kurenai after it nodded. They did. Well, they sorta did, Kurenai said, quickly adding, he's had some pretty big mood swings lately. Sometimes it's like he wants to participate in the group, like asking Sakura how's she progressing in genjutsu or asking Shino about his bugs. Kurenai sipped her tea to gather her thoughts. However, Asuma added, but at other times, he's even more antisocial than he was. He snaps at anyone that comes close to him, and making conversation is impossible. It's completely destroying any teamwork between him and his teammates, sighed Kurenai. I'm not sure what to do, she said, holding her head up with her hands. Even though she was a little embarrassed that she couldn't manage her own genin, she knew when to ask for assistance. Kakashi hummed, as if he understood exactly what to do. Kurenai gave him a hopeful look, but it quickly vanished when Kakashi grinned at her and remarked, I have nothing. Asuma saw that her gaze was fixed on him, but he shrugged and said, you really got a tough break, even more so when it's your first genin team, with regret. Even though Kurenai hadn't had high expectations, she couldn't help but feel let down as she sipped her tea. Her eyes darted back up to Kakashi. How's Naruto been since the fight? She asked, wondering if he was acting out too. Maybe I'll take him to the Yamanakas for an evaluation sometime, she muttered. Flipping a page, Kakashi responded, Naruto was a bit out of it a few days after the match, but Hinata and I talked to him, he's fine now. Naruto wasn't doing well. In all honesty, he wasn't doing well at all. His body was covered in wounds. A massive 4-claw gash had left his left arm useless. Blood was seeping through his hair. Not a single place on his body was pain-free. Naruto scowled at the 4-tailed clone in front of him, he could almost feel Mema's deranged smile. Naruto would acknowledge that he wasn't prepared for 4 tails if he was being truthful with himself. He might have even been slightly stronger than 3 tails, but he had been able to keep up. But the sheer power boost that the 4th tail offered had taken him by surprise. When Mema's flesh started to peel off, he was perplexed, but he persisted anyway because Mema insisted. When a black ball engulfed Naruto's evil clone, he was compelled to leap back. Naruto gave the half-ram sign, which would terminate the sparring, and spat out a mouthful of blood along with a molar. Simply put, he wasn't ready until he could beat 3 tails outright. Mema, though, had different plans. He threw back his head and felt bubbles of chakra emerge from his body. For a brief moment, Naruto stood there, wondering what Mema was up to. This was unlike anything he had ever seen. What on earth is this? As he watched the chakra center above Mema's mouth and transform into an unsettling-looking ball, he thought. With every shinobi instinct screaming that the odd jutsu was bad news, Naruto took a step back. When Mema swallowed it, he took another. And another when his bloating reached comic proportions. Naruto triggered the chakra suppression seals as the blast shot out of Mema's mouth. Mema was encircled by chains that caused steam to burst upon contact as they drained the repulsive chakra. As the seals on the walls started to absorb power from the Bijudama, they glowed white. Naruto understood now what it was. But it was too late, he had set the seals. The chakra mass continued to whirl toward him, its power and speed terrifying. Oh shit. Before the chakra bomb erased him from the planet, Naruto was able to think as he raised his arm and a Rasengan spiraled into existence. With a sigh, Kiba entered his kitchen and picked up a bowl. Kiba was completely bored. Since yesterday, he and Akamaru had not had any missions. They were off for the day because Kakashi-sensei said he was searching for a badass one for them. He went to the cupboard where his sister had stashed the cereal and poured himself a bowl. If Hana ever found out, she would kill him, but she had a mission to complete in the upcoming week, so by then, she wouldn't remember how much was left. He heard a faint whine and looked down to get his partner another bowl. He let out a deep breath as he finished the cereal, freely confessing that it was far superior to rice. He was thinking a lot about his squad. He acknowledged, "I'm not as strong as them." He knew it to be true, even though it was a serious slight to his pride. For Kiba, not being the strong one was a novel idea. He had always been one of the strongest since the academy. Even though he struggled academically, he consistently placed in the top 2 for physical attributes. Sasuke was the one who maintained the top spot the majority of the time. Kiba concluded that he didn't like it. Being the one his team had to watch out for didn't sit well with him. Every practice run had found him to be the weakest link. In terms of strength, ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, speed, and strategy, Naruto outperformed him. In terms of tracking, accuracy, dodging, medical matters, and strategy, Hinata-chan outperformed him. There was nothing he could add. His only real strengths were his tracking abilities and taijutsu, both of which Hinata-chan and Naruto outperformed. Kiba let out another sigh and stroked the top of Akamaru's head. "What are we going to do, buddy?" he asked himself, to which his mother replied. As she stepped into the kitchen, Sume asked with a feral smile, "Get beaten to a pulp by your sister." She was surprised that he didn't respond with an angry statement saying he could beat his sister any day of the week. Glancing back, she observed Kiba propped up on the table, engaging in some light play with the remnants of his cereal. Sume's eyes widened momentarily. Kiba never brooded over a topic or felt down for longer than 5 seconds. It dawned on her then what Kiba was contemplating. So, it happened at last. Sume thought to herself as she picked up a glass and filled it with water. Little Kiba-chan has finally realized that he's not the biggest fish in the sea. It happened to most Inuzukas, so she had been wondering when hers would. Sume would be the first to acknowledge the haughtiness of her clan. Not the hot-headed, obstinate arrogance of the Uchiha and Hyuga, but a different kind of arrogance. Thus, a great realization that the world is much larger than one's perceptions came to most Inuzukas. People who didn't died. Kiba softly said, "Hey, Mom. Am I weak?" as he placed his bowl of milk on the ground for Akamaru. "Hein," Sume remarked, "Well, you're strong for a genin, but in the grand scheme of things, yeah, you're pretty weak." "Naruto and Hinata are genin," Kiba mumbled, slumping onto the table as her response didn't seem to help. With a hing sound, Sume smiled. "So that's what brought this about," she said, moving to sit across from Kiba. Kiba muttered, "They're just so much stronger than me, I'm just weighing the team down at this point," and then froze when an idea struck him. He suddenly got excited and asked, "Mom, could you train me?" After giving it some thought, his mother asked, scowling at Kiba, "Why should I?" With a ferocious smile. "I'll clean the kennels for a week," Kiba said with much less enthusiasm as he paled and sighed in resignation. "A month?" Kiba's mom retorted sharply. "No way, I'm not going to clean the stupid kennels for a month," Kiba exclaimed, his mouth dropping. Soon said simply, "Then I'm not going to train you," as she emptied her water and proceeded to place it in the sink, allowing Kiba some time to consider her offer. She heard Kiba slam his head against the table and murmur, "Fine," and she smiled. Naruto looked down at the remains of his arm, grinding his teeth in agony. He was missing 3 fingers, his skin was completely ripped off, and he was certain that it was broken in at least 4 places. Menma's irrational clucking interrupted his diagnosis. "How's your arm?" he inquired, grinning savagely. "I hope it hurts." "Menma, you know I've had way worse than this," Naruto smirked, trying to hide his discomfort, and steam burst from the claw marks on his shoulder. Before attending to his many other wounds, he needed both of his arms to be functional. "Yeah, I know. Those memories are the only thing that keep me entertained in between spars," Menma chuckled, his expression pleased. He was aware that Naruto was lying. Additionally, he enjoyed the fact that he had injured him. Naruto scoffed as he tried his left arm. It was barely functional. The bone mending or regeneration had begun, but the flesh wounds remained. "I don't know why I allowed you to continue talking. You always talk about how much you dislike me." "I know exactly what you're going to say before you do," Naruto muttered, his stomach rumbling dangerously as he made his way to the exit. Menma yelled at Naruto, who simply waved goodbye without turning around. "Don't walk away from me as if you won this fight, Uzumaki. This was my victory and it will be the first of many. One day soon I will take the power away from you and you will be the one in this room." After walking back through the door, Naruto closed it behind him. Naruto hissed, gripping his arm and trying to force the wounds to heal more quickly, but it was only crawling. "That fucking hurts," he said. The reason for this was that Naruto's body was running low on supplies to treat his wounds. Kurama was unable to create anything out of nothing. In order to heal Naruto's body, he required liquids, protein, calcium, potassium, and other elements. Naruto's body was gradually running out of natural reserves as a result of his inability to eat a full meal. In the hopes that there would be food in the kitchen, Naruto released his grip on his arm and made his way there. Konohamaru was gasping for air. The boss's training regimen was rigorous. In his whole life, he had never felt so exhausted. His muscles burned and his body ached from weariness. But no matter how much his youthful body begged to give up, he would not. Not before Hanabi did. Hanabi's state was no better than Konohamaru's. Her pride in being a Hyuga was the only thing keeping her moving after her body had reached its limit. She had been strictly adhering to their sensei's instructions, as had her training partner. They adhered to the instruction scroll, and on most days he would supervise them. They had nearly completed reading it from beginning to end. For nearly 5 hours, she and Konohamaru had been running around the village, neither of them willing to stop. The fact that the kids were still going amused and astounded their Anbu guards, who followed them. Even though they were new to the academy, the children were already putting in more effort than most genin. Because Kat recalled the days when Naruto was the one pacing the village, they felt respect for both the kids and Naruto. She followed the quarreling kids, thinking to herself, he found 2 brats that are just as stubborn as he is. Can he help the world if he ever gets a genin team? As he battled for the lead, Konohamaru exclaimed, Pant, you should, give up loser." Before Hanabi accelerated to retake the lead, he was able to overtake her for a brief period of time. She cried, trying desperately to widen the distance between Konohamaru, as if, monkey boy. You're the one that should give up. As she pumped her legs more forcefully, Konohamaru pushed himself even harder, letting out a grunt of exhaustion. He had promised he would prevail from the start. If he couldn't even defeat a girl, he wouldn't be able to become Hokage. As they got closer to the fallen oak tree that marked the finish line, the 2 kids were running side by side. With every step, they both tried to outpace each other by pushing themselves harder. Their breaths were rough and short as their feet struck the floor with muffled thumps. They both finished precisely in sync at the same moment. Konohamaru staggered to a halt and exclaimed, "Ha! I beat you." Hanabi was not convinced. Liar. Pant, I won and pant, you know it. Though he was secretly hoping that Hanabi would decline the challenge, he boasted, oh yeah. How about another lap pant around the village to prove who's pant the real winner here? As she gasped for air, Hanabi glared at the boy. She opened her mouth to reply, telling the monkey boy he was on, but Kat had knocked her unconscious so the words never came out. She struck Konohamaru with a fast blow to the back of the neck as well. Kat did it for their own benefit, even though she was aware that taking out a clan heir, much less two of them, was probably a very bad idea. She had witnessed the same thing with Naruto in the past. Both of them would have persisted until they passed away or collapsed. It was for the best. They didn't know when to quit, Lizard said, nodding to her as he picked up Hanabi and vanished with a shunshin. He was Konohamaru's guardian, and Kat was Hanabi's. With a sigh, Kat picked up the boy and, like him, disappeared with a shunshin. Entering the kitchen, Naruto's expression was expressionless, belying the agony within. It hurt more than a little bit, but in his childhood, he'd suffered far worse. The kitchen was not as bright as the other rooms. The soft light of the fluorescent bulbs hanging overhead filled the room. Naruto dashed towards the refrigerator, hoping it would be overflowing with food, but when he opened the doors, he was let down. They were empty, not a scrap or a morsel remaining. Naruto let out a disappointed sigh, not that he was shocked. He had, if his memory served him well, cleaned out the refrigerator a week prior. He shut the doors and proceeded to the pantries, opening them similarly to how he had done with the refrigerator. He was let down, just like the refrigerator, to find that there was no food. Naruto's arm pounded in agony and his stomach growled in agreement as he pounded his head against the closed doors. He walked over to the cabinets and whispered to himself, why is there never any food? Why did I promise Hinata-chan that I won't steal anymore? Their last hope was that he couldn't recall ever going through them. He searched through the cabinets. The last one contained a box, but the others were empty save for dust bunnies. Naruto picked up the box with trembling hands, blew away the dust, and opened it. Naruto's own invention, nutrition bars, was inside. But Naruto saw that the G1 was written in his own handwriting at the top. The G1 denoted that this was the initial generation of the nutrition bars. He was in the process of developing the G6. Taking a deep breath, Naruto picked up one of the bars which had a wrapper on it and exhaled deeply. He wasn't working on the nutrition bars because they weren't effective. In fact, they were finished in that regard. Rather, he was focused on improving the taste. If Naruto were to be completely honest, he would prefer to eat dirt than the latest generation. He braced himself, sliced open the wrapper with a tiny bit of wind chakra, and took a big bite. It's gross, he whispered as he finished the first bar, his wounds already starting to heal more quickly. He forced himself to chew before swallowing, fighting the urge to spit the disgusting tasting object out of his mouth. Whispering again, it's so gross, he reached for another. Just outside the Hokage's door, Kat shunshined. Before she was allowed inside, she knocked twice. When Hiruzen saw his grandson being carried beneath the arm of one of his most trusted Anbu, his eyes narrowed in concern. However, as soon as he saw Kat's posture, his eyes relaxed. She wasn't nervous enough for him to get hurt, and even if he had, she would have taken him to the hospital first. As Kat placed the boy on the couch, the elderly Hokage inquired, a smile playing on his lips, I take it my grandson has been training rather hard. He and the Hyuga heir, I had to knock them out or they would have pushed themselves to collapsing or death, Kat said, causing the Hokage to roll his eyes. I take it that Naruto's influence. The Hokage inquired. Hi, Hokage-sama, I haven't seen anyone this determined since him. Kat nodded as she stood over Konohamaru. He seems to have a knack for bringing out people's rivalries and motivations. The old man laughed at that and muttered, yes, he does seem rather talented in teaching, before turning to face Kat and asking, how did he do? Incredibly well considering he's in the academy. Due to the rivalry between he and the Hyuga heir, neither took a break nor complained and pushed themselves harder. They made admirable progress because of this. I estimate that both he and the Hyuga heir will be eligible for early graduation by the end of the year, Kat stated. Hiruzen's eyebrows shot up. He was not prepared for that. After just a year at the academy, Konohamaru ought to be grateful to Naruto if he was already getting close to genin level. Though, he does slack off when it comes to academics. He claims he won't need them when he's Hokage, Kat continued. Hiruzen nodded. What youngster didn't enjoy studying, after all? A low moan cut him off just as he opened his mouth to reply. Konohamaru, whose body ached from his workout, moaned and rubbed his eyes. His grandfather was grinning down at him as he took in his surroundings. Cat had disappeared into thin air. "Welcome to the world of the living Kono-chan," Hiruzen replied. "I hope you enjoyed your nap." After blinking once and twice, Konohamaru suddenly jumped up and exclaimed, "How did I get here? I just beat the weirdo in a race." He was furious and asked how he was going to celebrate his win if she wasn't present. Hiruzen answered with a smooth voice, "You collapsed from exhaustion and my Anbu brought you here." It was not necessary for the boy to be aware that he had been rendered unconscious. "It's 7 o'clock, Konohamaru exclaimed as he leapt down from the couch, his eyes darting to the clock and his jaw dropping as it did. With a mix of amusement and curiosity, the Hokage peered down at him and inquired, "Is there something special about the time?" Konohamaru proudly nodded and said, "Yeah, it's time for Kenjutsu training. Boss said that if I manage to get to the halfway point of the exercises then I can start learning." The halfway mark, Cat told me that he almost pushed himself to collapsing. "Just what are you having my grandson do, Naruto-kun?" he thought, somewhat surprised. Hiruzen questioned in silence. Konohamaru's expression suddenly darkened, "But I don't want to learn Kenjutsu." "Well, I do, but not as badly as Bojutsu," he exclaimed, his eyes fierce. "Bojutsu, smiled Hiruzen, amused. "Yeah, boss made me read books and some of them were about you. You totally kicked butt in the wars with your staff. Please teach me Ji-chan," Konohamaru pleaded. "That I did, grandson, but I don't have time to teach you. I have my duties as Hokage to attend to," Hiruzen stated, appearing somewhat disappointed. He was deeply disappointed that he was unable to impart his specialty to his grandson. "What about the shadow clones boss uses? He uses them to do the things he doesn't want to do," Konohamaru said in a tone that was innocent but yet pointed his head to the left. Hiruzen hesitated for a while, feeling his world slowly come apart around him. He repeated, "Shadow clones," as though the term were unfamiliar to him. He parted his lips, ready to speak, but nothing came out. "Shadow clones," he said once more before it all started to make sense. Then something came back to him, a far-off recollection that the passing of time had nearly erased. As he entered the Hokage's office, which would soon become his, he discovered the Nadaime beaming with happiness. The fact that Hiruzen had never even seen the Nadaime smile, much less a full-fledged smile, startled him. "Sensei," he had questioned, unsure of himself. When the Nadaime saw his pupil for the first time, he instantly suppressed his smile. "Ah, Hiruzen, I didn't notice you there," he muttered. No matter how secure or at ease, Hiruzen's sensei was always on guard. This man was either an extremely incompetent spy, or the Nadaime was exceptionally joyful for some reason. "Sensei, what was all that about? Why were you smiling?" he inquired. His lips twitched. "I've created a new jutsu called the Shadow Clone Jutsu. It's a solid construct of chakra that transfers all memories and experiences to the user. Though it is a very high-cost technique, the user must evenly split his chakra with the clone. So it will be difficult to use in mass numbers," he clarified. "That's amazing, sensei. What's it used for?" Hiruzen exclaimed as his eyes grew wide. "Rakan," the Nadaime muttered after he hesitated. "You lied to me, sensei." Hiruzen thought angrily, so many things would have been different if he had known the true purpose of the shadow clone technique. He would not have to spend an inordinate amount of hours a day locked up in this stuffy room. He could resume his training and go for strolls through the village. With a nervous step back, Konohamaru took a step back as Hiruzen looked down at him, seeing the nervous look in Gigi's eyes. Abruptly, the elderly man gave the boy such a strong embrace that his back hurt. Holding Konohamaru closer, the elderly Hokage exclaimed, "Oh, Konohamaru, you're the best grandson a man could ask for." Gigi, let me go, I can't breathe," Konohamaru cried as he fought to break free of the old man's unbelievably tight grip. The boy gasped in agony and for air. Hiruzen, however, was unable to hear him and simply tightened her grip. Sitting in her Zen garden, Hinata hummed to herself. It was a small area isolated from the larger Hyuga compound. Hinata took care of it after her mother passed away, but it was originally hers. She was now happy and proud of it. Koi fish lived in a small pond that was connected to a small waterfall. She had her pointer to sketch shapes in the fine white sand. Herbs and flowers of every description were growing there. Finally, There was her bench, which Naruto had covered in seals to make it so cozy she didn't want to get up from. With a satisfied sigh, she took a sip of her tea and observed the bamboo stalks filling up with water, then toppling over and spilling their contents into the pond. It was one of her rare days off. She had the entire day to herself because she had no missions, training, or spars scheduled. Naruto refused her request to spend the day with him because he had a scheduled date with Menma. A tiny shudder ran down Hinata's spine at the thought of the twisted clone. It was unsettling how, despite Naruto's insistence, he could resemble his creator so closely while still being so vicious and pure evil. When Naruto sparred with Menma, she knew he was playing a risky game, but she still trusted him and his seals. Menma wouldn't be able to leave if Naruto had said that she wouldn't. No, I'm going to enjoy my off day, Hinata shook off the thoughts of Menma. I refuse to allow anything to ruin it, she thought resolutely. Who knew when she would have another day off like this? After all, a shinobi's life was chaotic. But as though to contradict her statement, a whirl of leaves materialized in her garden. As they dispersed, Hinata noticed Lizard, Hanabi's guard, holding Hanabi in his arms. Hinata was quickly up and demanding to know if her sister was okay. She's fine. She pushed herself until she collapsed. I don't think she'll be waking up anytime soon, said Lizard, nodding as he handed Hanabi to Hinata to carry. If it had to do with her training, Hinata had insisted that he come to her instead of going through the entrance or straight to the clan head. As Hinata took Hanabi, she nodded. Lizard vanished with another whirl of leaves as soon as Hanabi was in her arms. You worked yourself really hard. I'm proud of you, Hanabi, Hinata said with a smile as she made her way back to her bench. She would usually lead Hanabi to her bed, but her bench was superior to opulent beds in many aspects. Hanabi was placed on her lap with her head resting on Hinata's lap. Hinata exposed more of Hanabi's pale face by tucking her sleek hair behind her ear. The dozing girl muttered something in her sleep about a monkey boy before she gently snored. With a warm smile, Hinata said she could only imagine the kind of bond she and Hanabi could have if not for their father. She liked to think of them as the kind of sisters who talked about everything and nothing at all. She desired to share the same bond with her only biological sister, but she already shared one with Kurenai. It really couldn't get any better today, she thought, starting to hum once more. Naruto watched the small display, smiling. After mending as much as he could, he had come over to Hinata's invitation to hang out, but upon seeing the two sisters, he had second thoughts. Heading home to change the bandages on his arm, Naruto leaned off the wall he was hiding behind and slipped his hands into his pockets. Although he hadn't been able to completely mend the muscle and skin damage, he assumed it wouldn't be an issue. Naruto didn't know it, but he was gravely mistaken. After leaving the clan compound, Hinata was headed to the unique training area that she and Naruto had been using. Although the term, special, may be a little overdone, it was noteworthy because Naruto discovered his chakra arms there. They were essentially passing the time until they had to go to a mission meeting after lunch, but they had agreed to get together and practice a little. She noticed the aforementioned blonde approaching her as she approached the location. She gave him a small smile and hurried to meet him. He wore a long-sleeved shirt, though she thought there was something off about it. As she drew nearer, Naruto also saw her and winced, but he continued to move, bracing himself for the reprimand he knew he would get. Hinata gave him a suspicious glance. Why are you wearing long sleeves? Naruto lied with ease. It just felt like a wardrobe change, but Hinata knew he was lying as always. With a narrowed gaze, Hinata approached him, took hold of his arm, and pulled up his sleeve to reveal his bandaged and injured arm. She was shocked and exclaimed, What happened? She had never witnessed a Naruto injury that persisted for more than a couple of hours. Retaking his arm, Naruto sighed in agreement, even though he knew he would have to explain everything to Hinata. Hinata was against Menma's very existence and threatened to punish him severely if she found out about the ass-kicking he had given him. With Menma, I bit off more than I could chew, he groggily said. Hinata's eyes narrowed. Naruto said in a thoughtless but shame-filled tone, I thought I could handle 4 tails since I've been beating 3 every time. Turns out the 4 tail causes some weird reaction because the next thing I know Menma looks like a black and red human fox thing and he's wiping the floor with me. He had almost overestimated his strength after so many years of being able to learn almost anything in a matter of months. Though he was not as conceited as the bloodthirsty Uchiha, he had started to believe that he was a greater fish than he truly was. He was therefore strangely grateful for Menma's reminder that he was not unbeatable. I told you I didn't like you training with that thing. How long do you think it will take to heal? Hinata said with a frown of frustration that turned to worry. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. I can't say for sure. I'm entirely out of food, and until I'm able to get more nutrients in me it won't heal. It will heal, it just can't do it without the needed materials. You shouldn't steal it. Although, you could come over to the clan compound. I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem to feed you, Hinata said, giving Naruto a somber look. She was unable to recall when Naruto had last visited the compound. Really, sweet, was how Naruto smiled as his eyes brightened and he began to think of a feast. After saying that, the two headed in the direction of Hinata's house. Actually, the entire training process had been a front to allow them to hang out. Anyhow, that was their strategy. But on their journey, they encountered someone they both knew well and, more than the other, didn't like. Wearing the robes of a noble, he was a slightly older teenager than Naruto and Hinata, with short black hair and dark green eyes. In addition, he was abnormally attractive for his age. This was Akira, a member of the feudal lord's inner circle and the son of Byakuya. And, as far as Naruto was concerned, a profound jackass. Because he had gone on a date with Hinata, and not always of her choosing, Akira had already met the pair. Hiashi had determined that Akira would make a suitable partner for Hinata to court and potentially wed. Additionally, this would bring the Hyuga clan into the inner sanctum of the feudal lord, bestowing upon them numerous other benefits. Naturally, Hiashi had determined that it would be best for Hinata and Akira to go on a few dates in order to gauge this idea. Even though Hinata didn't like the idea, she reluctantly agreed to it since she understood what would happen. Even though Hiashi hadn't made Hinata go on a second date with the teenager with the black hair after their first went badly, he was much more upset to learn about it. Though he wasn't going to press Hinata, he was furious with Naruto. But Naruto was less than appreciative of the notion. Naturally, he wouldn't take any harsh action like outright opposing the dating. Instead, he was cunning about it, playing practical jokes on the two daters while they were occupied, like painting signs or using buckets of water as props. Hinata tried not to chuckle. Ah, Naruto-san, Hinata-chan, it's good to see you both again, especially you my young beauty, Akira said with a charming grin as she saw the two of them bow respectfully. It's nice to see you too, Akira, Hinata remarked somewhat brusquely. She didn't particularly like Akira, even though he was one of the more charming men she had been made to date. Hinata discovered that Akira was a well-known pervert who seduced young women into having sex with him before abandoning them in the dust through the shinobi's whispers. Knowing that she was just another teen's conquest, she had been disgusted to learn of it. Crossing his arms, Naruto rolled his eyes. He already had a bad opinion of Akira, but the man kept trying to make Hinata feel good in bed, and it was really getting on his nerves. Because Hinata was afraid for Akira's life if Naruto found out about her nature, she had taken care to ensure that he was unaware of it. I see that you've been injured recently, Naruto-san, Akira said, pausing as he turned to face Hinata's friend and noticed the white bandages poking out of his sleeves. Yeah, bit off more than I could chew with training, Naruto said, unfolding his arms to show more of the white bandage. You might want to start training a bit yourself. After all, the lifestyle of a noble isn't an active one, he remarked, eyeing Akira's stomach. A hint of mischief then appeared in his cerulean blue eyes. Akira skillfully covered up his eyebrow twitch. I will consider your suggestion. Moving on to more important matters, it's quite nice that we ran into each other today. I was hoping you would join me today, Hinata. Just the two of us. Hinata gave a kind smile. I would love to. Unfortunately Naruto and I have other matters to deal with first, she said. The defeated Akira sighed. Ah, I see. Well, it just would have been nice to spend my last day in the village with you. But I suppose you have your own things to deal with, he replied with a sense of disappointment. Hinata held back a sigh, knowing what needed to be done. I guess I have some time, she muttered, giving Naruto a pitying glance. She had a father, so Naruto would be in trouble if she didn't leave on good terms with Akira. Akira made a 180 in response and said, lovely. As the two of them walked away, Naruto moaned in frustration. With a defiant smirk, he leapt to the rooftops. The shadow that followed Hinata and Akira through the village mostly left them alone. Actually, Akira was the one who was unaware of the shadow. They approached a little stand selling trinkets and looked through the inventory. Akira slowly extended his hand to the side as Hinata examined a few of the objects with interest. But before he could react, he was bumped into by someone. "I apologize, sir. Are you hurt?" he asked, turning to the elderly man in question and muttering for a moment in frustration. The elderly man chuckled feebly. "Oh no, I'm fine, I just lost my balance is all," the elderly man said, bowing as he passed by and unintentionally stabbed Akira in the top of the foot with his cane. With a muffled scream, Akira was stabbed in the top of his foot by the piece of wood. "Are you all right, Akira?" Hinata asked, turning to face him worriedly even though she knew exactly what was going on. Akira trembled a little and laughed weakly. "Ahaha, I'm fine, just rolled my ankle," he said, lying with a forced smile. With a nod, Hinata turned to face the elderly man who was ducking into an alleyway. She bit her lip in a small smile, wondering what more tricks Naruto would pull. They were trodden upon all day long on their date. Every time he tried to move or hold her hand while they were strolling down the street, something would get thrown or dropped on him or someone would bump into him. When he tried to place his hand on her shoulder, a sea of people suddenly parted, causing him to finally let out an irritated growl. "Gah!" he exclaimed in frustration. He was working too hard to entice Hinata and getting nowhere near her. Hinata looked at him, perplexed. "Are you all right?" With a defeated sigh, Akira got himself together. "Yes, I'm fine, I'm just frustrated at what deity is getting in our way." Hinata sighed too, then looked up to see Naruto giggling inaudibly. "Well, I think that's enough time wandering around the village. Why don't we make our way to a meal?" Hinata winced in shock. Sorry." Akira furrowed her brow. "Are you all right, Hinata-chan?" Hinata gave an uncomfortable laugh. "I'm fine. Yes, getting something to eat would be good." Akira nodded, and the two of them headed to one of the upscale restaurants in the neighborhood. After watching them enter and survey the area, Naruto leapt down close to the window to watch them order their food and take a seat. "Hey boss," a voice called out to Naruto, breaking his reverie. After blinking, Naruto pivoted to the side. "Oh, Konohamaru," he uttered, sounding slightly shocked. There was no sign of his student. With a menacing smile on his lips, Naruto glanced down at his apprentice and nearly brushed him aside. "Hey, Konohamaru, wanna help me out with a ninja mission?" he asked, but he already knew the answer. While Hinata and Akira were seated, Hinata saw Ebisu and his pupil Konohamaru enter the restaurant. Turning around, Akira saw Hinata's inquisitive stare and turned to face them. "You know them." With a curt nod, Hinata steered the conversation in a new direction. Konohamaru wondered why they were there as soon as they entered. "Hey bo Ebisu-sensei, why are we in this stuffy place?" Ebisu slyly adjusted his spectacles. "Simple, honorable grandson. While out in formal meetings with officials and other Kages, it's likely you'll be involved with formal dinners. You should know the proper etiquette for such situations, as well as what the proper foods while meeting with other officials should be. It is required as." Ebisu was shocked to discover that his son was absent. "Honorable grandson, honorable grandson." Konohamaru yelled. "Hey, come on, let's eat already." From a nearby seat, Ebisu walked over, letting out a frustrated sigh. "Honorable grandson, you shouldn't run and shout like that, it's unbecoming." "Ah, shut up, I'm starvin'." Ebisu and Konohamaru placed their food orders, and Ebisu sat down grumpily. There was a relative quiet for the next few minutes, until Ebisu saw their server come over carrying their food. "Why don't you be a good Samaritan and bring my soup over to me, honorable grandson?" Ebisu asked, pointing to the waiter. Konohamaru got up with a sigh. "Stuffy jerk." Noodles and broth flopping around, Konohamaru ran over to the server and had a brief conversation with him before grabbing the soup and running back to Ebisu. Ebisu got up, concerned. "No, honorable grandson, don't." By the time Konohamaru fell face first and tripped over his own feet, it was too late and Ebisu's soup flew into Akira's lap. Akira clenched his fist and widened his eyes, then calmed down. He cast a worried glance down at Konohamaru. "Pardon me, are you hurt?" Konohamaru sat up with a moan. "OWWW, you jerk. Pardon, you tripped me, I did no such thing." Konohamaru yelled, "Jerk," and hurled a paint bomb at Akira's face, covering his face, hair, hat, and top of his shirt with pink paint. With a tongue out, Konohamaru took off running. After inhaling deeply several times, Akira turned to face Hinata. "I apologize, but I need to wash this off," he said in a flat, composed voice. He had never felt so ashamed in his life. As he turned and walked away, silently laughing into her hand, Hinata smiled and nodded. Akira made her way to the restroom by walking down a hallway. This is too bizarre. It's just like before. At least it's not the same putrid color. What pretty pink hair. Akira froze and spun around, seeing Ebisu grinning proudly behind him. Something I can help you with. Ebisu gave a shrug. He said, not particularly, though I think you looked better in orange, and turned to leave the restroom, but his voice sounded different from what it had just been in the dining room a short while earlier. Though Akira had heard the voice only a few times, it was a familiar one. With a sigh, Akira balled his fists. I see how it is, Naruto. After leaving the restaurant and running into an alleyway, Ebisu and Konohamaru broke out into fits of laughter. A cloud of smoke surrounded Ebisu, then parted to reveal Naruto. Patting the boy's helmeted head, he exclaimed, ha ha ha. That was great, Konohamaru. So I did good, Konohamaru asked, receiving a nod from Naruto. Then teach me that genjutsu you used on the real Ebisu Tem. Konohamaru demanded, beaming broadly at Naruto's praise. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto contemplated teaching a child this method. Okay, he said after making up his mind. Konohamaru would make him laugh so much that the stain on his conscience would be worth it. Konohamaru jumped with excitement. Not only did he get to learn a mean jutsu, but he also got to make fun of Hanabi for being prankish with his boss. The following morning, Kakashi, Naruto, Hinata, and Kiba showed up at their training ground to receive their daily objectives. So, are we finally getting something done today, sensei? Kakashi chuckled to himself. Yes, Kiba, we are. In fact, we'll be heading to the Hokage's tower to get our newest mission momentarily. I've even picked the perfect mission beforehand. After arriving at the Hokage's office a few minutes later, Team 7 waited to be given their mission in the center of the room. Team 7 reporting in for, Kakashi began, but the Hokage interrupted him with a raised hand. With a sigh, Hiruzen leaned back in his chair and took a puff of tobacco. Your team has been requested for a mission, he said in a tone that suggested resignation. Kakashi narrowed his eyes in perplexity. He had been asked on missions 6 times this week, which was not unusual for a ninja team, but it was extremely rare for a genin team. Team 7 had only been reunited for a month when they received this request. Though the Hokage's demeanor suggested otherwise, it was possible that someone they completed a D-ranked mission for had been impressed by their work. The gray-haired ninja caught the scroll that the Hokage threw at him and asked, "What's the mission?" In just a minute, Kakashi finished reading the scroll and hummed to himself. Nothing too spectacular, just a little high-profile mission for AC ranked. They would be traveling at civilian speed for 2 or 3 days while escorting a VIP to the capital. The servants that the VIP would be bringing would also be under their protection. He could see why the Hokage was hesitant to give it to them, even though that sounded fine, even better than the mission he had intended to take. He could almost see the tension building between his group and the customer already. With a lazy expression, Kakashi put the scroll in his pocket and said, we'll take it. He thought this would be a good opportunity to teach his cute genin that it's okay to not always like the person you're watching out for. Are you sure, Kakashi? I know your genin are well trained, but I would normally send a team of chunin for this kind of mission. The Hokage raised an eyebrow. The VIP was the son of a highly influential man in the capital, despite the fact that the mission was only rated a C. Although the likelihood of shinobi involvement was minimal, Hiruzen was not fond of taking chances. They can handle it, I'm sure, Kakashi said with a nod. Again sighing, Hiruzen chose to accept Kakashi's word on the matter and said, so be it. Bring in the client. The client entered and the doors opened. Based on the conversation they had just overheard, every genin anticipated the arrival of a princess or a prominent noble. Rather, they received Akira. Upon seeing Naruto's blonde mop of hair, Akira furrowed his brow. Of course you would be on her team, he muttered, before stepping over to take Hinata's hand and gently pressing it. But if it means that I have someone of your caliber protecting me, I am willing to suffer through it. Akira said to Hinata. Naruto grinned menacingly before stating, you're right, you do need someone protecting you, and snatching Akira's and Kiba's arms. The boys let out a surprised and irritated cry before blue chakra appeared on both of their hands. Akira let out a startled cry, momentarily losing track of his years of emotional regulation training, and attempted to remove his hand while Kiba followed suit. But before they ran out of room to move farther, their hands could only reach a distance of roughly 6 feet. What the hell is this? Kiba exclaimed, pulling hard on the chakra line that joined his hand to Akira's, sending him to fall face first. Too troublesome to explain, but think of it as a handcuff, You can only go so far away from each other unless certain requirements are met or I cease the jutsu. Naruto smiled, getting a violent look of glare from Akira and Kiba in response. Kiba could tell right away that this guy was a complete jerk, and the idea of having to spend much time with him did not sit well with Kiba. But Akira didn't just want the jutsu to end because Kiba smelled like a wet dog, he also wanted to know how he was going to seduce Hinata at this point. Kakashi and Hinata laughed as they observed the scene, daggers pointed at a heartless Naruto. Exasperated, Hiruzen pulled down his hat. I really don't think this is the team for the job. Akira said in indifference, no. Then, with more grace, he cleared his throat and remarked, I think they are more than qualified for my protection. Kakashi gave a nod of approval. Plus it might be a nice, learning experience for the team. With a heavy breath, Hiruzen said, fine, but he still felt uneasy about the mission. Kakashi instructed Akira to head to the west gate so they could depart as the group departed. Kiba and Akira had to depart together because of their conjoined states. Kakashi stopped Naruto before he and Hinata left to accept her offer from yesterday. He said, yo, Naruto, stay behind for a second, but it was a barely disguised command. After giving Hinata a moment of confused looks, Naruto promised to catch up with her. Naruto asked, what's up, Ni-san? As the two started to move. About your chakra handcuff, do I need to worry about that? After all, not everything goes according to plan on a mission like this, Kakashi asked, glancing at Naruto idly. Even though it was funny, the risk of their client passing away was not worth a few laughs. Chuckling, nope, since it's my chakra, it responds to my will. I've placed a few requirements on it in case I'm not around when it needs to come off. If their heart rate accelerates above a certain point, then it'll just dissolve. It'll also dissolve when they want it to come off badly enough, he continued. After giving it some thought, Kakashi nodded. Akira didn't particularly like Naruto to begin with, even though he wasn't exactly in favor of him annoying a significant person once in a while. The group moved toward the front gate and waited for the arrival of Akira, Kiba, and his attendants. Even though Naruto preferred the idea of having servants, he chose to keep it to himself, which irritated him further. That is, until Kiba and Akira truly made an appearance. Naruto gaped in shock. Why you gotta be kiddin' me, he muttered, shocked. The cart that Akira used to transport everything he owned was the cause. A gigantic cart that was twice as big as usual, complete with a nearly 10-foot-long bag that contained everything he owned and the carriage he traveled in. His attendants were ambulating on the earth surrounding him, transporting the items that were too large for the carriage. Naruto believed that to be unjust. When the carriage came to a stop, Akira held out his hand. Hinata, would you like to ride in the carriage with me? Hinata gave a headshake. No thank you, I will be better able to fight out here than in there. Akira let out a defeated sigh. So be it. After giving Akira a sly smile, Kakashi approached her. So, have you gathered everything you need? Akira gave a positive nod. Good. In that case I say head out. At a civilian pace we should reach the capital in 3 days' time. Barring any interruptions. Good. Then let's go. My father will be eager to hear what I have to tell him. Curious, Kakashi blinked and gestured for everyone to proceed, and so the group started their arduous journey towards the capital. Things had only gotten rough, or annoying from one crow's perspective, after the group had only been gone for a few hours. The first was that Akira was trying to get Hinata into his carriage for nearly the whole time. The issues also included Naruto focusing most of his attention on attempting to stop it, ranging from the cunning request for Hinata's assistance in an investigation to the apparent act of simply leaping onto the carriage. The fact that Kiba was seated next to him and they were unable to be more than a few feet apart didn't help either. Later that first day, when Naruto noticed that the servants were beginning to show signs of weariness, not surprising given that they weren't trained shinobi and hadn't had a chance to rest, things between him and Akira became a little tense. This was because Akira had been able to eat his meal in the carriage, and the Leaf Ninja had been trained to eat and walk simultaneously. They need a break. Akira looked down at Naruto, blinking in surprise. Pardon. Naruto said again, your servants. They need a break. Akira gave him a perplexed glance. And what would you know about my servants? Look at them, they're just fine. You should mind your own business. Though for someone as insecure as you that may be hard. With a mocking eyebrow lift, Naruto asked, insecure? Yes, insecure. Why else would you cling to Hinata-chan so? Why would you interfere in her affairs as if you were a jealous child? Just as Naruto was about to insult Akira, Kakashi intervened. Kakashi yelled, "Naruto!" With a glare in Akira's direction, Naruto arched an eyebrow and used the energy from the sole of his foot to channel chakra while moving. A ghostly blue hand appeared from the wheel and then quietly withdrew the hubcap, allowing the wheel to come off and the carriage to come to a stop. Akira felt the jar and, of course, shouted in surprise. What on earth was that? With a fake curiosity, Naruto turned to face the ground. Looks like it fell off. What fell off? All Naruto did was point at the wheel. With a sigh, Akira gestured for his attendants to stop. A few of the female attendants gave Naruto appreciative smiles. Kiba's eyebrow quirked. Naruto sat with Hinata and they ate a small meal he had prepared in advance while the makeshift caravan stopped to wait for the carriage to be repaired. One of the servants approached Naruto as they were eating and gave him a small bow. Excuse me, would it be okay if I asked you something? In reply, Naruto gave a direct nod. Well, why did you stand up first like that? Naruto cocked his head, perplexed. What do you mean? Oh, was I not clear enough? I meant why did you try to get a break for us? Naruto also arched an eyebrow. I'm still confused. Why wouldn't I? It's obvious you guys are tired. The girl blushed a little and then gave him another confused look. But why would you worry? We're just mere servants. Naruto let out a frustrated groan. That's irrelevant. You're people. You're humans who have limited amounts of energy and need to take a break now and then. That jerk has no right to push you to the point of exhaustion like that. The girl flushed violently along her cheeks and bowed deeply. Thank you Naruto-sama. Naruto blinked with interest. Sama. Kiba, whose keen ears allowed him to hear the conversation, gave Naruto an amazed look before letting out a heavy breath of frustration. The group made the decision to camp there for the night because it would take a while to fix the carriage. Naruto appeared content despite receiving a reprimand from Kakashi. Naruto approached Hinata to ask her a question as they were setting up the camp for the night, but he was confused when she seemed evasive of him. He dismissed it with a shrug and continued working with the others to set up the camp. The following day, they resumed their journey to the capital by returning to the trail. Kakashi's reasoning had caused Naruto to lessen his pranking on Akira that day. Even so, he was able to assist the servants in certain ways by providing food, drink, and other necessities for their journey. Even the items they were carrying were sealed inside a storage scroll by Naruto. In the middle of the second day, things became a little more tense. They encountered another caravan, which is the cause. Not only was it a traveling trade caravan, but it was also brimming with desirable women. Naruto surmised that purchasing goods from a beautiful person would make people more likely to do so. Akira was 2 steps away from drooling over the girls, and Naruto saw it easily. Pardon me, Kakashi. Kakashi turned to look at Akira idly. That caravan over there, they don't have any guards do they? Kakashi looked at the nearby caravan and arched an eyebrow. They appeared to have a small group of hired mercenaries. He gave a shrug. Nothing on the level of a shinobi but something adequate. Akira gave his chin a rub. But they are such a large caravan. With that many goods they'd need proper defense. It's decided. We should link up with their caravan. As a son of one of the leaders of our great nation, it is my duty to protect all of the people traveling within its borders. Naruto let out a moan. It may extend the length of our trip, haha, but I think it is an acceptable trade-off to keep the group of people safe. After all, it is merchants like them that keep our great nation stocked and supplied. Kakashi shrugged again after idly watching. Works for me. Kiba and Naruto cried out, what? Food was scarce and Naruto wasn't even sure if it would last for another day. However, Kiba was tired of being dependent on this device and didn't want to use it any longer. Following their arrival at the new caravan and, naturally, after speaking with the leaders, Team 7 and Akira's group had considerably slowed down. With a questioning gaze, Naruto approached Kakashi as they strolled at their leisurely pace. Hey, Ni-san, how much longer is going to take now? After a few moments of contemplation, Kakashi shrugged. Dunno. You'd probably have more luck with the leader of the caravan. With a frustrated sigh, Naruto moved to the front, where the man in question was strolling. Naruto moved toward the tall, red-skinned man with green eyes and reddish-brown hair. The man was equally menacing and towering like a giant. Naruto was unaffected by his appearance, though, because he was known for giving some of the world's strongest men unpleasant nicknames. Yo, Giant Osan. Grinning, the man turned to face Naruto. Ah, you're one of those ninja, aren't you? Naruto gave a nod. What do you need? I'm just curious, how much longer do you think the trip will take, at this rate I mean? The man rubbed his disheveled beard and placed a hand on his chin in contemplation. He hummed for a few seconds before turning back to Naruto. You said you're heading for the capital, correct? Naruto gave a nod. Then, it'll probably take a little under a week to get there at this rate. With many of them perplexed, Naruto froze and stopped dead in place as the caravan passed by. A week, he thought in terror, I'm going to starve to death by tomorrow. How on earth was he going to get by on scraps for a whole week? As Akira's carriage passed Naruto, she cast a bewildered glance at him. You should really get moving, Naruto, we don't need you holding us back any more than you are already. Naruto stood and mumbled, his eyebrow twitching. Me, I'm the one holding us back, Naruto uttered after taking a long breath. He balled his fist. Even if you are the client, if I go cannibal then you're the first one I'm eating. But in this particular case, Naruto was totally unaware of the growing tension between him and Akira. The girls in the group talked among themselves and their new shinobi helpers, as well as Akira and his servants, as they made their way slowly down the dirt path that led to the capital. In the new formation, Naruto was positioned at the front, Hinata at the back to keep an eye on the caravan and the area surrounding it with her Byakugan, and Kakashi in the center to allow him to respond quickly. He occasionally glanced behind him to keep an eye on things as he scanned the area. Akira and Kiba were also in the center. That was where Akira's carriage and the most valuable cargo were located. He saw that one of the servants was sweating and stumbling after a while, but His Highness was not observing. Beside him, Naruto created a silent shadow clone before sprinting back to the man who was stumbling in the formation. You all right? The man gave him a feeble glance and a similarly feeble smile. He trailed off. Hehehe, I'm fine. I could use a drink of water though, in response to Naruto's incredulous look. With a nod, Naruto took out a tiny water bottle and gave it to the man. With a grateful nod, he quickly sucked down the water. Then he winced and gave Naruto an apologetic look. Naruto grinned. It's all right. I've been trained to go for a lot longer without water than a civilian. Besides, he continued with his trademark grin, I wouldn't get paid if you guys didn't make it one piece. Then, at Naruto's remark, Kiba and Akira paled as several of the caravan girls, one with short black hair, one with long green hair, one with blue hair that reached her waist, and one with blonde hair, nearly passed out. So cool. Naruto regarded them with curiosity but brushed them off as weirdos. Akira's eyebrow quirked. That bastard. Naruto merely arched an ear. Later, there was another incident just like this one. Akira was approached by a young woman with long brown hair, one of the caravan girls, carrying a plate of fruit. Pardon my lord, would you like some fruit? Akira grinned as she glanced down at the girl. Of course my dear, I would gladly accept food from you. It is kissed by the sun itself. After giving him a compliment, the woman approached Naruto with a smile. Here, would you like some? After giving a nod, Naruto reached into his pocket. Sure, how much? The female arched her brow. Nothing. You agreed to give us your aid in our travels for free. In return, you needn't pay a thing. Naruto dismissively waved his hand. That's dumb. I still need to pay you. I doubt you got those for free. Besides, a few ryo for a juicy apple you spent your time getting or growing is nothing. After grinning broadly, the woman gave Naruto 2 apples. If you truly must know, it'll be 7 ryo. With a nod, Naruto gave the woman the money and proceeded to purchase the entire bushel with his existing savings, devouring every single one in a single mouthful. He swallowed some whole. The fangirls of Naruto cried out, "So cool." But he disregarded them. Even though he thought their behavior resembled that of the Thames fangirls, he rejected the idea. When he could count on one hand the number of people who had ever liked him, the idea that random strangers would like him for no apparent reason just didn't occur to him. Kiba gave a frustrated snarl, and Akira used his hand to smash his apple. The caravan stopped later that day to make camp. Naruto observed how the servants and caravan riders were preparing the camp. He approached one of the group's chief attendants. To get his attention, he gently tapped his shoulder. Hey, I'll take over. The man gave him a perplexed glance before grinning. No, it's all right. Besides, it'll take all of us. With a smile on his face, Naruto waved his hand to create 40 copies of himself. Naruto smiled and said, "Leave the tent to me," as the caravan gaped at the display. As the 41 Narutos entered and set up the tent, the caravan's members and attendants stared in shock. This time, the Naruto fangirls remained silent. That resulted from them losing too much blood while they wondered what else Naruto could accomplish with his clones. Later, once the tents were up, Akira was sitting by the fire, flirting with the caravan's girls with his skillfully timed moves. Kiba was so sick of the tool's terrible lines that she felt like throwing up. Not that he wasn't making an effort to attract attention, though. With Akamaru's assistance, he had been able to win over a couple of girls. Akira grinned and sighed in satisfaction as they carried on their conversations with the stars. You know, ladies, people should try more often to be like the stars. A few of the girls gave him perplexed looks. What do you mean? Akira smiled and responded, simple, the stars are up in the sky, existing together, acting as one entity despite being separate beings. Providing light to the world below and to each other, being so close and connected as one moving body. His statement caused the girls to all coo. As he attended to the fire, Naruto sighed with irritation. Don't kid yourself. Akira gave Naruto an irritated look. Then, with a sly smile, he challenged Naruto, a challenge he knew the blonde would not be able to meet. Oh, and what do you mean by that? Naruto cast a narrowed gaze towards Akira. What I mean, is don't let appearances fool you. The stars may look so close together from here, but if you get up close you'll see that each star is just floating alone by itself in the sky. The stars may be with each other in that large pool of the sky, but they're all completely alone, isolated from one another, just like people. The girls gasped at the blonde's statement, and Akira gave her an incredulous look before shaking his fist. The same group of girls gave Naruto a mischievous, staring look. So cool. Naruto frowned and continued tending to the fire, ignoring them. That evening, Hinata was assigned the first watch, and when she heard movement behind her, she was sitting on a tree with a view of the majority of the forest. She pretended not to notice them until they were close, but she had heard whoever was behind her for some time. Pissed. Turning, Hinata saw one of the caravan girls behind her, in the tree, the one with the curly blonde hair. She glanced at the floor before turning to face the girl. How did you get up here? Branches. Hinata asked, perplexed. Oh. Do you need something? After nodding, the girl cast a mildly ashamed glance downward. I was hoping to ask you about him. After blinking, Hinata arched an eyebrow in comprehension. Oh, you mean Naruto, she said, suppressing a jealousy wave with a bit of flatness. Even though Hinata was starting to feel envious of all the attention Naruto appeared to be getting from women, she chose to ignore it since she was happy for her friend. He was so accustomed to the village's disapproval that she felt it was a welcome change for him to be well liked by most. After giving a nod, the girl moved to stand by Hinata's side. Yeah, him. With a small frown, Hinata cleared her throat with a shake of her head. What do you want to know? Oh, just simple stuff. Like what's he normally like, what's he like to eat, who are his parents? With a narrowed gaze, Hinata responded to the final question with a sigh. Food is Naruto's favorite thing, it doesn't matter what kind but he likes ramen the best, and was taken aback when the girl began to take notes. Hinata paused, considering how to respond to the final question. Naruto's is laid back but he's very protective of some things. He can also be a little distant at first but once he gets to know you he won't be, she said. About Naruto's parents, well, I don't know. And neither does Naruto since he's an orphan. The girl gave me a confused blink. An orphan you say? Oh, that must have been so hard for him. Hinata gave a nod. It was. He was a very lonely and had something terrible happen to him. After that he had trouble making friends but he made more friends in the past year and now he's not lonely anymore. The girl gave Hinata a cunning smile. Do you consider yourself one of his close friends? When Hinata realized what was going on, she reddened and blinked in confusion. She turned back to the girl and pressed her fingers together angrily before managing to eke out, well, yes, friends at least. You wanted to know a few other things, didn't you? The girl nodded, and for the rest of the evening, she and Hinata talked about a variety of subjects, most of which revolved around Naruto. Naruto groaned as he awoke the following morning and slowly sat up. He yawned heavily and stretched before emerging from his sleeping bag. He heard a disturbance nearby and narrowed his eyes. As he approached to look into it, he noticed the caravan and the others standing around, two of the girls yelling at each other, and looking like they were in the middle of packing up. He moved to join the group, humming in frustration. He asked, "Hey, what's going on?" as he glanced up at Kakashi. Kakashi gave a shrug. Can't say really. To me it looks like those two are fighting over something. Not sure what, but it seems like one of them stole something from the other. After hearing Kakashi's response, Naruto became displeased and resumed their argument. He decided he'd had enough after a few moments and strode into the center of it. Hey, cut it out. A hint of killer intent silenced the two girls as they groaned at him. He scowled at them, exasperated. So just what the hell's going on here? With a huff, the two girls folded their arms. Then one pointed accusingly at the other. Yumi over here stole my special hairpin and refuses to give it back. With a scowl, the other girl countered, and I already told Mayu that she dropped it on the path earlier yesterday. Yeah right, I'm not so stupid as to do that. Everyone knows you're jealous of me. And preventing me from pulling up my perfectly combed hair is just another to show it. Please, you're just a stuck-up bitch. I have no concern of your stupid hairpin. With a sigh, Naruto created a shadow clone and sent it back along their previous path. Then he turned back to the girls and tried to defuse their argument once more. Listen, I just sent a shadow clone up the path to find the hairpin. He should be back in a few minutes. If he finds it, then you need to apologize to her. Yumi huffed with pride. Naruto turned to face her, his expression equally frustrated. But if he doesn't find it, then you'll need to help search for it or hand it over if you have it. At Naruto's commands, both girls took a step back and cast gloomy glances down. Kakashi was just in awe of Naruto. I never thought that was possible. The shadow clone came back after a short while and was about to tell Naruto what it had discovered when it caught sight of something. When it turned, it saw Akira with a long metal pin in his hand that had an elaborate head, and he was using it to make designs by punching holes in pieces of cardboard. It scowled suspiciously and approached Akira. Oi, where'd you get that? Akira furrowed an eyebrow in protest. Why does it matter to you? Just answer the question. HMPH, I saw it lying on the road yesterday and had one of my servants hand it over. A sly gleam appeared in the clone's eyes. Akira and Kiba were pulled by their ears by the clone, who grunted in agony, as it rounded the corner after a few more seconds. Kakashi blinked, perplexed. Naruto faced the replica. What's up with this? The duplicate smiled. I found it. Prince Charming saw it lying on the road earlier yesterday and had one of his servants hand it to him. He's been using it to draw shapes in cardboard. Mayu's eyes widened as she felt bad for yelling at Yumi, but then something clicked, and she snatched the hairpin from Akira with a growl. She cried out, "Ah!" as she looked at the broken and bent tip. "You jerk!" she exclaimed before giving him a hard blow to the top of the head. "How dare you use my grandma's special, handcrafted hairpin as an etch? You jerk!" Sick with shock and pain, Akira was on the verge of tears. Then Mayu approached Naruto and gave him a deep bow. "Thank you for helping me. This hairpin is extremely important to me. I don't know what I would have done if I lost it for good." Naruto simply grinned broadly. "Sure, but don't you have someone else to talk to?" Mayu blinked in confusion, then recoiled in recognition and approached Yumi. Her expression briefly changed from one of displeasure to one of regret to Yumi. She apologized with a deep bow. "I'm so sorry, Yumi. I didn't mean to blame you for this. I was just angry and scared that it was gone." Friends. With a sigh, Yumi grinned at Mayu and the two hugged. Friends. After that, they both bowed to Naruto. "Thank you for your help." Naruto gave a characteristic smile. "Not a problem." Kiba, Akira, and Kakashi had wide-open mouths. Enraged by jealousy, Akira and Kiba shook their fists. With a sly smile, the blonde girl turned to face Naruto. "You are a smooth operator." Following that, Naruto led the caravan as they gathered their belongings and set out. Mayu and Yumi suddenly felt the urge to stay close to the front of the caravan, much to Naruto's dismay and the envy of many of the men. Koga was an outlaw, not just any bandit, though. He led a bandit tribe, and unlike other bandit groups, his operation encompassed far more than a dozen or so members. No, his tribe numbered close to 100 people. To keep moving, they made use of Koga's cunning. They never made a big show of themselves, and if they did manage to score a big point, they took care to ensure that it couldn't be linked to them. They believed they had been performing admirably as well. That is, until their base suddenly became home to 7 shinobi. Koga struggled to control his shaking voice as he swallowed hard and asked, So, why are you here exactly?" The fact that these people were dangerous was screaming at him from every fiber of his being. The group leader held up a photo and grinned. Its center was a blonde with blue eyes.
So this was the end of the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, we weeb offline.